Welcome to another session on internal security. So, yesterday we had started with the role of media and social media in creating security challenges for the country. We had covered a part of the discussion. We had understood the different ways in which media and social media platforms can be misused to create different kinds of security problems. So, today we'll continue that discussion. We will wrap up this chapter and we'll also take up the next topic where we will study the basics of cybersecurity. So, before we begin, I'm really glad so many of you could join today. I wasn't really expecting so many students because of the India Pakistan match. So, that shows your commitment. So, a pat, you guys pat yourself on the back. That shows you guys are really committed to attending the classes and ensuring that your preparation is not affected. However, if you are free to let me know the score in between. Yeah, so let's start. Let's get started with the popular cases that we have seen where social media has been misused. Today we'll begin with the misuse of social media and we'll see how it has created a real world impact. All right? I'll take up some specific examples from India and around the world to show that social media, when it is used for the wrong purposes, it can lead to a very dangerous situation where the security of the state could be threatened. Yesterday, we understood how propaganda, fake news, can lead to social engineering, causing manipulation of elections, triggering riots, unrest, and civil wars and rebellions. How it could aid extremism and even drive radicalization, thus helping terrorist and fundamentalist organizations. And how it could also enable organized crime on the darknet and the social media platforms. So let's study this with some examples. You need to know the real world incidents so that you are able to connect the theory with the application part of it. One major incident that we experienced was the Arab Spring movement, which we saw between 2010 and 2011. This was the first experience the world had with the use of social media for triggering mass rebellions and unrest against governments. Arab Spring is a name that is given to a series of pro democracy protests that erupted across the Middle East and North Africa. Across Middle East and North Africa region, you have many authoritarian dictatorial governments. So, in a small North African country known as Tunisia, this is where the first mass uprising began. It was a protest against dictatorship, authoritarianism, and corrupt dictatorial governments. Initially, when the movement began in Tunisia, it was a genuine, organic pro democracy movement, where people in authoritarian countries were for the first time organizing themselves by using social media platforms, especially Facebook and WhatsApp, which had started to become popular back in those days. As there was a growing adoption of social media, these authoritarian governments did not still have the ability to conduct surveillance on these platforms. These platforms could evade the surveillance of the intelligence agencies of these dictatorial governments. So the people in these countries who were affected by years of authoritarian rule, where they had no fundamental rights, no basic development, right? They were suffering from corruption and backwardness. So here the people rose up in rebellion, in Tunisia especially, and they protested against the authoritarian government of Tunisia. They organized the protest, they planned the protests organically by using social media platforms. So as it was not under their surveillance, under the government surveillance, they could easily plan and organize these protests, and eventually it would lead to change in government in some of these countries. In Tunisia, the people successfully threw out the dictator, paving the way for a change, a transition to happen. Now, this idea that people could organize and rebel against dictatorial governments through social media, this idea spread, it went viral across the region and affected multiple countries, including Egypt, Syria, Iran, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and many more. In many dictatorial countries here in West Asia region, we saw pro-democracy protests breaking out, where people were organizing themselves using social media platforms. Now, this movement, which was initially organic in Tunisia and even in Egypt, the movement was very organic, led by the people genuinely. They were genuinely fighting for democracy. But immediately, the big powers, they realized the power of social media, the power of the internet. They realized that they could misuse these platforms to run targeted covert operations to destabilize their enemy countries. The civil war that you see today in Syria is largely a manufactured civil war. The enemies of Syria, like United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they all played a role in backing a rebellion against the Syrian president. It was largely engineered by creating an uprising on social media platforms, by misusing social media platforms. Similar movements were triggered in other countries as well by the regional rivals. Iran would try to sponsor such a movement in the Sunni powers like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Others would counter Iran by triggering similar protests in Iran and other countries in the region. So this wave of protests, rebellions that was witnessed, which pushed some countries into a civil war, was an outcome of misuse of social media. It was one of the key factors. Is that clear? So this clearly showed the world the true power of social media, how people can organize democratically and fight for their rights. At the same time, it also showed how it can be misused by hostile governments, how it can be misused by intelligence agencies to alter public opinion, to carry out social engineering through targeted campaigns, and then lead these unrests and rebellions to topple governments and carry out regime change. So following Arab Spring, many countries started acting against social media platforms, including India. Because we all saw what was happening in West Asia, the role social media was playing in triggering civil wars and unrest and rebellions. So following this, governments started paying more attention to these internet-based platforms, especially to deal with the security threats that emerge from the misuse of these platforms. So this was one reason why the UPSC added this topic into internal security in 2013. Along with that, if you remember, we had discussed the exodus of Northeast people from several cities, especially South Indian cities. Under Northeast insurgency, I had pointed out this development in 2012, where Kokrajhar riots had happened. Bodo insurgents, they had targeted Muslim villages in Kokrajhar in Assam. Following these brutal communal riots, right, there were tensions around the country where several Muslim organizations were protesting against the riots that Bodos had carried out. So then a fake message started circulating. A fake SMS and WhatsApp forward went viral, claiming that Northeast people from around the country would be targeted by the Muslim community. This was an absolute lie. It was a rumor. The message claimed that Northeast students and workers will be targeted in other cities by various Muslim organizations to act against the Kokrajhar riots, to retaliate against Kokrajhar riots. But this was an absolutely false message. There was no such threat, no such organized attempt to target the Northeast people. But as soon as the message went viral, people would believe that this is true. And several students from Northeast India, workers from Northeast India, who are spread out across Indian cities, they fled the cities and started going back to their hometown. Especially in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, even in Delhi and Mumbai, we saw an exodus. Overnight, people were flooding airports, railway stations to catch the immediate available flight or train to leave the city and go back to their hometown because they feared that they'll be targeted and attacked. Fortunately, it didn't turn into a disaster. It didn't turn into any tragedy in India. There were no riots, nothing happened on the ground. But still, it showed the potential of how media, social media, if it is misused, right, it could create social unrest, increase divisions, in the country on communal and ethnic lines. So this also led UPSC to add the subject of internal security in the 2013 syllabus, and a dedicated chapter was given on the role of media and social media. Another major incident we have seen is the alleged Russian intelligence interference in the American presidential elections. There's a very strong allegation from the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that Russian intelligence agencies such as the SVR and the GRU. The GRU is a Russian military intelligence agency which specializes in cyber warfare. SVR is Russia's foreign intelligence agency. They were held responsible for the alleged manipulation of the 2016 elections, and the same allegations were raised during the recent 2020 elections as well. It was alleged that Russian influence operations were trying to influence the social media audience in the US. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, right? All these major platforms apparently were used for a targeted campaign where Russian agencies were trying to back the presidential campaign of Donald Trump. They were trying to discredit the opponent of Donald Trump, that's Hillary Clinton. What happened was Hillary Clinton's campaign was targeted by a series of cyber attacks where sensitive emails were stolen from the Democrat Party, and they contained a lot of sensitive details about the Democrat Party, Hillary Clinton, and her campaign. All these emails were leaked selectively in a targeted manner on Facebook and other social media platforms. The intention was to discredit Hillary Clinton. And parallelly, there was a lot of support for Donald Trump. The far right-wing elements in the US were targeted. The right-wing audience was targeted to create more support for the Republican Party, and issues like anti-immigrant stand against immigrants, and stand against terrorism, including Islamophobia, stand against minority races like the blacks, right? White supremacist tendencies. They were all promoted on social media, and the FBI alleges that Russian intelligence was playing a role in all these influence operations. The idea was to understand the political preferences of the audience by using Facebook, Twitter, etc. Right? You can create a profile of the users to understand what is their political preference. Those who are undecided voters, who are still between two parties, or those who are favoring the other party, they could be targeted with certain messages, posts repeatedly to push them to vote for the other party and vote for the other candidate. So such deliberate interferences were noticed by the FBI, and several investigations were carried out as well. These investigations, they have not conclusively established the Russian link, but most definitely there was a Russian covert operation designed to interfere in the American presidential process, in the election process. So this highlights the potential of how social media can be misused. There was another horrific incident in India. A fake WhatsApp message led to the mob lynching of at least 35 to 40 people in the country. 35 to 40 innocent people were lynched and murdered by mobs because of this one fake WhatsApp rumor. This message circulated at different points of time from 2015 to 2018. It was circulating, moving in different groups and circles in different regions. This message claimed that there is a child abducting gang in the area. There is a child lifting gang, meaning kidnappers who are looking to kidnap your children. And it was asking the people to be vigilant. It also contained a video. There was a video attached to it that would show as if it's a CCTV footage where the kidnappers are kidnapping a child right in front of someone's house. The message would also describe how the people would look, how these people look. Essentially, the description would match the homeless, the beggars who are on the streets, right? Or those who are, earning their daily wages on the streets. That is how the description was. So those who got these rumors, these messages, they believed that this is true. They actually believe that there is a child lifting gang in their area kidnapping children. So if they spotted any suspicious individual, or if they spotted any suspicious group of people, the mobs would take the law into their own hands, assume that these were the kidnappers, they would beat them up to the extent that the person would be killed. Such incidents are called mob lynching incidents, where a mob, a group of people, they break the law and attack a person, right? They beat up the person, injure the person, and even to the extent where the person could get killed. So many such incidents happened in different states in different periods of time. So initially, the police and the authorities, they did not see the pattern. It was happening in different places at different time. But after a couple of years, a clear trend was emerging. Everywhere mob lynchings happened, where innocents, they had nothing to do with any crime, they would have been beaten up and killed by the mob. So when police started investigating these cases, they saw the pattern. Some cases were there in Assam 2 years back. Some cases in Tamil Nadu. Similar incidents in Maharashtra. So this is not a coincidence. There is clearly a pattern here. So finally, the conclusion was this fake WhatsApp message was the trigger, where people believed the message to be true and mobs would attack the suspicious people, right? Even if they haven't done anything, they would beat them up, causing these deaths. So later investigations revealed that this was an entirely fake message and the message was created by miscreants. The video was from Pakistan, where a NGO had created an awareness video. It was an advertisement for social awareness to make the parents more aware about kidnapping, right, and how they should deal with kidnappers. An awareness video had been shot in Pakistan by an NGO. So they had cut off the clip. A part of the clip had been taken and attached along with the message, which went viral in India. So this was another experience we had with the misuse of social media that was directly contributing to law and order situation, where public order was getting affected. Another popular incident is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. Cambridge Analytica is a political consulting firm that provides political consultancy services to various political parties in the world. Its clients included some of the top political parties in the world, from the Democrats and Republicans in the US to Congress and BJP in India. All such major parties were the clients of Cambridge Analytica. See, to contest elections and to come out with strategies to win elections, political organizations rely on data. They rely on useful data through which they can plan their campaigns. This itself is not wrong or illegal. Using some data to determine how the campaign should be, how they should pitch themselves to the voters, is not entirely wrong. It's not illegal. So they have hired these political consulting firms. There are many more. Even in India, there are many political firms which provide this as a service. All right? There's nothing wrong with this. This is not at all illegal. This can be done. But the problem was Cambridge Analytica was using data from Facebook, which Facebook had sold without consent to Cambridge Analytica. The scandal broke out in the US. It was revealed in the US that Facebook had sold user data. Very intimate data had been sold to this political consulting firm. And this organization was using this for targeted campaigning and advertisements. Especially the target were the undecided voters. In any country, there are three sets of voters, rather four sets of voters. One, they would be loyal to party A. no matter what, they'll be completely loyal, right? The party might be the most corrupt party, the most vicious party. Still, they will always be loyal. They'll always vote for that party A, right? Another set which will vote for the other party, the opposition party. So these are the loyal voters. You can't change them easily. Whatever happens, right? They will always vote for these parties. The other category is the undecided category. They keep swinging. This year they vote for party A. Later they might vote for party B, depending on the party's performance, its manifesto, its promises, etc. Another set is voters who don't care. They don't vote at all. They don't participate in the electoral process at all. These undecided voters play a critical role in any constituency. If the campaign correctly targets the undecided voters, you can influence them. You can socially engineer them to ensure that they go and vote for a particular party. Now, with digital data, which is collected by social media firms, it's very, very easy to determine the political preferences of an individual. You yourself would have revealed your political inclination on social media through your posts, your likes, your preferences, through what you're searching, places you're visiting, right? What you're speaking, right? Everything which is tracked by social media platforms reveals your political affiliation. If this intimate data, which is your personal data, if it is sold without your consent and used for such purposes to manipulate elections, to swing votes, that is blatantly illegal. It threatens the very foundation of the democracy. That is why Facebook faced a lot of criticism in this scandal, where Mark Zuckerberg was called to the US Senate and the Congress, and he was lambasted by the senators and the congressmen, right, as to how the data was sold to this company without user consent. Cambridge Analytica had used the data for targeted ads and campaigns to push the voters to vote for certain parties. So electoral manipulation is a very big reality. With social media, it's become very easy. That's why every major party has its own IT cell, right, to run their propaganda. They not only spread the messages, they spread fake news, misinformation, and propaganda as well. Every party does this, not just one or two. Especially parties which are well funded, which have good resources at disposal. They are very strong in their campaigns, in their social media online campaigns. This can single-handedly result in manipulation of elections, which threatens your democracy itself. So this has become another concern, including the risks associated to data security and data privacy. I don't know if you know this. No social media app is free. You might think Instagram is free. You might think WhatsApp is free, right? Or Facebook is free. Trust me, none of them are free. You are all paying a price. Instead of subscribing to their app, their plans, or paying a monthly amount, you are paying them through your data. Today, we are living in the digital world where every sector of the economy has been digitized, right? We are in the fourth stage of the industrial revolution, which is driven by data. The fourth stage of the industrial revolution is driven by your critical emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, generative AI, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, robotics, Internet of Things. All these critical emerging technologies, they are based on data. So data is the new gold. It's the new oil. Those who control data, they control the future. If a government or a company can control a large volume of citizens' data or user data, they will control the future. So that is why data has become a geopolitical issue today, right? So your applications, all the mobile apps you're using, right, all the websites you're visiting, they all track user activity. The free applications that you're using, none of them are free. You're paying them with your data, right? You're giving up your behavior, your preferences and choices by what you're watching, what you're liking, what you're commenting on, what you're forwarding to others. So all this data is logged on the back end. When you download an app, it asks for several permissions, right? It will ask for permissions to access your contact book, right? Why do they need access to your contact book? Because they need to know your social circle. They need to know which phone numbers are stored on your phone, which matches with their accounts, the user accounts. And immediately the algorithm gets to know who's your family, who's your friends, who's your work colleagues, everything can be determined by the algorithm, right? Why do you think the apps will ask for permission to access the microphone, the camera? Without your knowledge, initially they would have gained the consent, but later, without your knowledge, the mic and the camera can be switched on to capture audio and video. This is needed for their product, to improve their product, to provide for voice search, voice recognition, right? And to provide for better image search, they use audio video which is captured from your phones. But the point is, it is compromising your privacy. Have you ever noticed? You might speak about a particular product to your friends. Let's say you want to buy a bike. You would have never searched for it. You haven't Googled it or you haven't searched anywhere. You just had a conversation with your friend that I'm looking to purchase a bike. Very next day, you will start seeing bike related ads coming on your screen, right? This is targeted advertising. Let's say you visit a gym, you join a gym, you start working out every day, right? The algorithm gets to know you're visiting a gym. It picks up your location. Location will be tagged to a gym. It knows you're working out, you're spending an hour. So it concludes that you're working out. Immediately you'll get products, ads related to your health, dietary supplements. All these ads will flood your phone. So this has great potential to change the economy. At the same time, if it is not used correctly, if your privacy, your data security is not protected from misuse, it can be used for very, very wrong purposes and reasons. Right? Every single choice you make could get manipulated by the private companies and your own governments and political parties. And that too without your knowledge. Is that clear? So that is the risk that arises from social media. That's why it's important to regulate the companies, how they operate, how they work, how they use the data that you're providing to them. And this is where data protection laws become very important. All right. Then other risk that we have seen with online internet-based apps is some dangerous games and challenges like the Blue Whale Challenge. There are many such variants and versions which are available even today. These challenges and so-called games, they are designed to attract children and teenagers especially. They are given tasks to perform. In the case of Blue Whale Challenge, each task was designed to isolate the child, isolate this adolescent boy or girl, and cut them off from their family, friends, and society. Each task, if they perform, right, once they complete one task, another task would be given. The tasks were designed in such a way that it had a psychometric analysis behind it. It was designed to isolate the individual, push them into depression. See, teenagers will already be suffering from various mental issues. It's part of growing up. But along with that, if such manipulation is being done, where you're being isolated, you're being cut off from your friends, family, and society, it's pushing you to depression and anxiety. It's putting you into low self-esteem, right? This affects the mental well-being of the child, of that adolescent kid. And the final task was very brutal and gruesome. The final task here was to commit suicide. The final task to complete the challenge would be to push the kid to commit suicide. And many cases have been recorded, which is tied with the Blue Whale Challenge. In India and around the world, several teenage suicides have been apparently linked with Blue Whale Challenge. There are even more brutal games which have come up, where it pushes the teenagers to commit crime, to commit robberies, to even commit murders and attack people, right? So this is a very big challenge, where miscreants are misusing the platforms and just playing with the lives of adolescents and young teenagers. So all of this, all these incidents, they represent a threat to law and order, to your national security, to our individual data privacy and data security. Correct? So that is why we need to tackle the misuse of media and social media. So what can be done? How can we counter these challenges? Let's discuss all the possible measures, and that will complete our chapter. We'll look at some basic measures that Government of India has already taken. We will discuss the latest Data Protection Act, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which has been passed by the government. We'll also discuss the IT rules, which have been notified to regulate these platforms. See, the best way to counter fake news is to bring authentic news. Verified, fact-checked news has to be brought out to counter the menace of fake news. This is the first step, and this responsibility lies with the government, the social media firms, and even with the public. Government alone cannot combat this threat. Even your reputed media platforms, they play a role here. Reputed media organizations, along with the tech companies, all the big tech firms, the social media firms, the common public, all of us, and the government entities, they should collectively counter fake news with authentic news. How do you do this? For example, the then Manmohan Singh government, which saw the threat which was rising from fake news and misuse of social media, notified a set of framework and guidelines to push all government organizations to have an official presence on all social media platforms. Very simple step, doesn't require any major innovation. Basically, every government entity, government ministries, departments, even your police forces, going all the way till your local police station, your city police, right? All government entities, ISRO, the armed forces, everyone was encouraged by the government to have an official social media presence. That's when all of them started opening their official accounts, be it Telegram, YouTube, Twitter, that is X today, right? Then, of course, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, all the popular platforms. So today, all government agencies have an official registered presence where they are giving you official information. Now, how does this help in tackling fake news? Let me give you an example. Let's say there is a fake message spreading that India has decided to close the borders with Nepal. Just an example, just a basic hypothetical example. Let's say there is a fake rumor spreading that India has decided to close the open border with Nepal because of security threats. When this fake message goes viral, people start believing it. It affects India-Nepal relations as well. But immediately the Ministry of External Affairs can step in, right? It can step in. People will start tagging MEA's account. It can counter this by spreading the right information. It can say this is fake news. There is no such decision or policy which has been taken. Nepal is a great friend of India. We have not taken any such decision. This is fake news. Don't pay attention to it. The moment it is clarified by the government authorities directly in real time, the fake news is dead. Clear? Let's say a rumor is circulating in a local area that communal riots have started. Let's say on WhatsApp and other platforms, videos and messages are circulating that communal clashes are happening in the city. Immediately your local police, your city police and your local police stations, they can start spreading the right message. They can counter the fake news saying that everything is normal, there are no communal riots happening, this is all a lie, it's a fake news. Don't pay attention to it, please maintain calm. Just one counter message from the authorities will end the cycle of fake news. So having an official presence on the platforms is important, and accordingly, guidelines were framed by the government. How social media should be used by government entities, right? Get the accounts verified. Get the accounts verified with the tick marks, the blue tick marks, so that users know that this is the official account, the only official account. Have a dedicated team or a personnel who manage the social media platforms and have a process through which you release information. You post official information on these accounts. So this is one step in countering fake news. Similarly, the tech companies can play a role. They can design features in the app where people, the users, can report any fake news. You'd have seen, you have a provision of reporting, right? If a fake news is circulating, if it's not rooted in facts, you can immediately report the post, and the social media companies, they have a system on the back end to review the post and try to take it down. So they have a team of reviewers as well who manually review some posts. They have automated algorithms as well which do it. So it's a mix of strategies they have used through technological innovation, through which even they are trying to tackle the menace of fake news. Let's say some individual or a party or organization, they're spreading hate propaganda. They're targeting a community or promoting genocidal tendencies, right? Promoting hate speech. Any such offensive messages can be flagged by the users, and it will be reviewed on the back end. And if it violates the community guidelines, they'll take it down. So social media firms are playing a role as well. So public plays a role by reporting these posts and incidents. And the public should also be more aware, should use more common sense while before believing something that they're reading on social media. I'm sure you'd have noticed in your own friends and family circle how even educated people fall for posts which are absolutely ridiculous, be it religious propaganda, political propaganda, right? And even other trivial messages, especially the adults, right? The mid-age, older adults who are new to social media and internet, they tend to believe whatever they read on these platforms. Even youngsters, even educated youth, even people with very good qualifications fall prey to this menace. This is where fact checking comes into picture. Before you believe anything, just from a WhatsApp forward, just from an Instagram post, cross check whether the information is correct. If any information is too good to be true, if any post is too if it is too stunning to believe, just do a fact check, right? Read from authentic, reputed media outlets. Do a basic Google search. Try to read from reputed outlets or government channels whether this information is correct, right? Don't read from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not the source. Go to reputed websites where enough fact check is done. Good media outlets like all the popular national media that we have, all global media outlets, or government accounts, or any channel, any website which is known for its integrity. So follow them, read there, check your facts, and see if what you're reading is correct or not. And if people around you are believing in absolute fake news, you need to counter them. It becomes your responsibility as well to tell them that this is not the truth. This is absolute lies. It's fake. You need to show them the actual information to counter that. So that becomes a public responsibility. So this is a collective effort. Your media outlets as well, like let's say Hindu, Indian Express, Times of India, all the big news channels, even global outlets like CNN, BBC, Guardian, right, the Telegraph, they all have formed their own industry level associations to counter the menace of fake news. There are civil society members, right, who are contributing to this. They start their own channels where they investigate thoroughly any fake news which is reported to them, and they bring out the facts into the public domain. So through these collective efforts, you can tackle the menace of fake news. Social media firms should promote more transparency with regard to their inner workings. They should be more transparent on how they are collecting data, how they are using it, how they are targeting ads to their users. The ad policy should be very clear, right? They should obtain your consent before collecting data. They should let you know how your data is being used. They should create internal mechanisms for review of any objectionable posts that are promoting hatred, propaganda, fake news, sexual violence, anything. If it has to be reported, there should be a review which happens based on which they can take down the posts. And even for this, they should be transparent about their community guidelines. They can't simply protect all the posts by saying it does not violate their community guidelines, right? So they need to be more transparent in their inner workings, inner functioning. This is their responsibility as well. They should also cooperate with law enforcement authorities, security agencies when required, and obey the law of the land. This became a major challenge. It still is a challenge for us because most social media companies are located in foreign jurisdiction. Even though India is one of their biggest markets, most social media firms, big tech companies, their biggest subscriber base is from India. Given our large population, our large population with phones and internet access, right? We are the biggest market for them. And yet, your data is being stored abroad, right? Most foreign companies, until one point, didn't even have a presence in India. They would virtually operate, right? All the servers, the data centers will be located abroad under foreign jurisdiction. So it would become challenging for us to enforce our legal jurisdiction. When Indian authorities would seek information, seek more data, these companies would deny. They would refuse to cooperate, saying that we are not obliged by Indian law. They would say that we are operating from US, operating from a European country. Our data centers are here, our offices are here. So we are not obliged to Indian law. Now, this was unacceptable to India. If the user base here is in India, if they're collecting Indian data, obviously the Indian government will exercise legal jurisdiction. So this became a source of conflict between these tech companies and the Indian government. Is that clear? That is why India has been pushing for data localization. Meaning we want these companies to set up local data centers in India. Ensure that Indian data is stored here within our country, within our sovereignty, within our geographical boundaries. So our laws will apply. Our authorities will have full jurisdiction and they can force them to cooperate and share their data with us. So this has become a source of conflict between the tech companies and the government. But companies also have a valid point. The concern of these companies is that if they set up local data centers, what if the government itself is misusing access? What if the government forces the companies to reveal user data to carry out surveillance? What if the government is using the data access to target political opponents and critics and to spy on them, to carry out espionage on them? That's a violation of your fundamental right to free speech and expression. That is why social media companies and all the tech companies, they usually prefer jurisdictions which are more liberal, more progressive. They look at countries which have very strong measures against government surveillance, where there are strong data protection laws and data security provisions. And this also has to do with the technology. Data centers, they require massive cooling solutions, meaning air conditioning. That's why they don't prefer tropical countries, hot tropical countries, where the cooling bill will shoot up. Electricity bill will be massive for a data center. That becomes a huge cost for them. So they prefer cooler countries, temperate areas. There are data centers which are underwater as well, right? Because it reduces the cost of cooling. So there are operational costs involved, which becomes a economic factor for the companies to provide local data centers to you. So they prefer these foreign data centers which are more affordable for them, where the operational cost is less, and they prefer such jurisdictions, such laws which are favorable for users and the companies, where government rights is restricted from carrying out surveillance against the citizens and the critics and the opponents. So this becomes a source of friction between the companies and the government, right? So government is pushing for data localization, but the companies oppose that. So this is something we need to sort out. Yes, the companies have to set up local data centers. There's no question about it. If they're operating in India, having the biggest base in India, they need to have offices here. They need to have offices deployed here. They need to have data centers located here, which will follow Indian law. But there should be restrictions on government's powers as well. Government itself can become the biggest violator. It's not just the companies which are a threat to your data privacy. Your own government can be a threat, right? Intelligence agencies can gain unauthorized access by forcing these companies to give access. By citing national security grounds, they can ask access and they can snoop on your data, which helps the government to target critics and opponents. It will help the government to curb right to free speech and expression, which is a fundamental right. So as users, we need protection from both. We need protection from misuse of data by the government and also from the private companies, the tech companies. So this is where a data protection law becomes very important. Next, social media companies have to self-regulate. They need to do this internal regulation. They can come up with tech innovations and new features to make the platforms safer and to deal with the threats and the misuse. Like for example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp introduced a great feature to limit the number of forwards to prevent certain messages from going viral. The number of forwards you can do was limited. It's a tech feature, a new innovation which was added to the app. You'd have seen that messages which have gone viral to a very big audience, you can't forward that to more than 5 contacts or 1 contact, right? So that is a very small innovation that helps in curbing the virulent spread of a message. Usually viral messages could be fake news or rumors. That is why WhatsApp added this basic feature, a very simple innovation, but has a huge impact. The feature of having verified accounts with a blue tick is another genius innovation. Simple but effective. Because when you have leaders, celebrities, government institutions having accounts, there could be many fake accounts as well. Tomorrow you can open an account in the name of Prime Minister Modi, make it look exactly like the Prime Minister's account. What if you start posting some random information which might have security consequences, right? Or you might open fake accounts in the name of other leaders and celebrities or government institutions and start spreading fake news. How will the users know which account is official, which is not authentic, right? So to distinguish genuine accounts from fake accounts, they introduce a very simple feature of verification. They verify these accounts and they give a blue tick, which is clearly prominently shown right next to the username. The moment you look at it, you know it's an official account. All other fake accounts become useless automatically. Very simple, but very effective. So this is the kind of innovation and new features which need to be added to make social media a safer space. Regulation by the government becomes necessary. These companies can't claim that government regulation should not be there. If every sector can be regulated, then why not this sector, which has such a big impact on the economy and security of the nation, right? So bringing out regulatory provisions, bringing out laws and rules through which you can regulate these companies, the way they operate and function. And finally, the government itself should carry out surveillance through its intelligence agencies to look out for misuse and the security threats. Intelligence agencies should keep a close watch on social media platforms, on what users are posting, what are they interacting, right? They need to check terror activities, any activities against the interest of the Indian state, any direct security threats, public order, law and order threats. These have to be picked out through electronic surveillance, where the internet traffic will be intercepted by the intelligence agencies and they carry out surveillance. Now, some of you might be wondering that I'm contradicting myself here. On one hand, I'm saying government surveillance is a threat. On the other hand, I'm saying government surveillance is needed, right? On one hand, I'm saying social media companies need some protection from governments. And I'm also saying there should be regulation on social media companies. I'm not contradicting myself. I'm saying that this is how complex it is. It is actually a complex equation between 3 entities. And to resolve the complexity, you need efficient laws, policies, and rules. All right. So let me just open a new slide to explain this complexity. Let us look at this complexity. Let's understand what are the demands of the citizens and the users. What are the demands of the social media companies? What are the demands of the government? It's essentially a triangular contest. You have the users and citizens here. We represent one end of the stakeholders, the government over here, and the social media firms and the tech companies over here. All right. Now, what do we want as users, as citizens? What do we want? We want data privacy. Because today, data privacy is a fundamental right. Do you know under which article data privacy becomes a fundamental right? Under which article of the Indian Constitution does data privacy become a fundamental right? Some are saying Article 19, some are saying Article 21. The correct answer is Article 21. It's part of your right to life. All right. This was a recent interpretation given by the Supreme Court in 2017 in a landmark case. Do you know which case is it? In which case did Supreme Court declare right to privacy as a fundamental right? Very good. The K.S. Puttaswamy case. In the K.S. Puttaswamy case, the Supreme Court has delivered a historic judgment, one of the biggest judgments in recent times. It upheld right to privacy, which includes your digital data privacy as well, as part of your fundamental right under Article 21. It's part of your right to life. So as users and citizens, we are using these social media platforms, contributing our data to them. We are citizens of this country, so we expect data privacy. We expect our fundamental right to be upheld. Who should uphold your privacy? Your government and the companies. They both should commit to not breach your data privacy. Is that clear? Then what else do we want? We want our data to be secure. Data security is what we expect. Because we are contributing data not only to the companies, you're contributing data to the government as well. Right? You have an Aadhaar card, you have a PAN card, you're paying taxes, you have bank accounts, you're using several government platforms, tech digital platforms. So you're contributing your data to the government entities as well. So even from the government, we want data privacy and data security. Same with the tech companies. We want our data to be safe. It shouldn't get into the hands of the wrong people. It should not have any unauthorized access. It should not be misused. That's what we expect. As citizens, we also expect the country's security and law and order to be maintained without any threats from media and social media. Correct? As citizens, we want our country to be safe. We don't want a hostile intelligence agency misusing the platforms to create security threats. We don't want terrorists and radical groups to promote terrorism by using social media. This is also a concern of the citizens. So the government wants to ensure the national security of the nation, maintain public order. That would be the top priority of the government. Right? The government would want to ensure that these apps and platforms are not used to create security threats and law and order problems. It also has an obligation to ensure the data privacy of the citizens and data security of the citizens. It's a duty of the government. Data privacy is a fundamental right, so it's an obligation on the government. The government would like to have access, at least some limited access to the data. The government would like to carry out legitimate surveillance. If security threats have to be handled, law and order has to be maintained, then legitimate surveillance becomes necessary on the citizens. Is that clear? Some degree of surveillance from intelligence and law enforcement agencies becomes important. But again, it shouldn't be a misuse. It shouldn't be mass surveillance or targeted surveillance where critics and opponents are being targeted. Right? This should be done in such a way that it should not threaten your fundamental right under Article 90. Without posing a threat to your free speech and expression, if the government is carrying out some legitimate surveillance to look out for suspects, look out for terrorists, to look out for these illegal, suspicious activities, then it's well and good. So there should be a mechanism here in the government, a transparent mechanism as much as possible to guarantee that your basic rights are not being breached. The surveillance being carried out is legitimate in the interest of the national security and the order, law and order of the nation. So for that, they'll need some access, either given by the companies or directly accessed by the intelligence agencies through their interception. Now, what do the tech companies want? Their main priority will be ease of doing business. They want to easily conduct their business with limited difficulties. They would like to protect their profits. Nothing wrong with that. That's what private business is all about. Right? They would like to minimize their cost. Nothing wrong with that. And they would like to protect their users. Users are the core of their business. So they have a inbuilt obligation to protect data privacy and data security of the users. So their concern is about government gaining unrestricted access. They are worried about it. They are worried if security law enforcement agencies enforce themselves on these companies with very strict rules and regulations, and if they're forced to share data and give access to government agencies, they're worried about the breach of fundamental rights, especially in authoritarian dictatorial countries, even in democracies where governments are known to breach fundamental rights. They might misuse the data and the access to target critics and opponents and curb free speech and expression. So they want a certain degree of protection here to ensure there is no unrestricted access and misuse. And on the other hand, they want to protect their users as well, which is genuine interest for them, right? So these are the different interests of the three parties: the government, the tech companies, and the users. Now, how do you solve this complex problem, right? Some interests are contradictory, right? So how do you resolve this? To resolve this, you need an effective data protection law. So this brings us to the discussion on data protection law in India. A well-crafted data protection law that strikes a balance between the three can resolve this problem. You can strike a balance through a data protection law that will balance the interests of all the three parties involved: government, the companies, and the users. If there is a well-drafted, a balanced law that's brought out, it will protect the interests of all the three entities and strikes that much needed balance. So let's see where India stands. Let's see what we have done with regard to data protection. Now, you tell me in the comments, do we have any law like this? Is there a law in India that protects your data? Yes or no? Yes, very good. Just 2 months back, in August, the Parliament has enacted the Personal Digital Data Protection Act. It's already become an act. All right, very soon it will be enforced by the government. So there is a history behind this law. The process of bringing this law started in 2017. As early as 2017, after especially the Puttaswamy case, where Supreme Court upheld right to privacy as a fundamental right, it became necessary for India to have a data protection law. Or else, how can data privacy be protected? How can data protection be guaranteed? Right? And also, India being one of the biggest internet markets in the world, and given how important data is to the economy and to geopolitics, it was crucial for us to regulate data and how these companies are operating. So that is why the government set up a committee, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, METI. Your METI ministry constituted a committee under Justice B.N. Srikrishna. The Justice B.N. Srikrishna committee came out with several recommendations, submitted the report in 2018. It suggested a data protection law with some well-defined provisions. Based on this, a data protection bill was drafted and introduced in the parliament by 2019. All right. But for the next 3 to 4 years, the bill became extremely controversial. So controversial that eventually the bill had to be withdrawn by the government. Last year in 2022, the bill was withdrawn from the parliament by the government because of the controversy. The controversy was mainly because the government had deviated from the recommendations of Sri Krishna Committee. The government had given itself a lot of exemptions which had been challenged by the public, by the stakeholders. The fear was government will get away with the violations, and the fear was it could lead to mass and targeted surveillance that could threaten your fundamental rights. Plus, there was strong opposition from businesses and companies, particularly on provisions related to data localization. As it was mandated that these companies have to mandatorily set up local data centers in India, there was very strong opposition from the big companies, and their governments also supported them. US government, European governments, right? Because all the big tech companies, they're all US or European based, most of them. So this became a diplomatic issue as well, where foreign governments pressurized India to simplify the law because it was threatening their business model. It would increase their operational costs, affect their profit margins, and affect their market access as well. So because of all the controversy, there was pressure from opposition, pressure from media, the public, civil society, the companies, and foreign governments. So because of all these issues, the bill was withdrawn by the government. In fact, Justice B.N. Sri Krishna himself was critical of this bill. He criticized the Modi government for diluting the provisions, for moving away from what he had actually recommended. When I say he, not individually, his committee, right? The committee he headed had actually suggested a more balanced version, but government moved away from it, gave itself more powers, which could lead to surveillance against citizens, which could affect business models. So that is why the government withdrew the bill, and finally a new draft was presented. A new bill was brought out. A new bill was brought out by the government. The Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. The Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. It was tabled recently, passed by both the houses, assented by the president, and now it has become an act. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. Now let me take you through some of the key provisions of the act. What are the major provisions? UPSC might ask you to analyze the act, or in prelims there might be a basic question related to the provisions of the act. These provisions are still based, some of them at least are based on Sri Krishna Committee recommendations, some provisions. But government has added many new provisions to satisfy different stakeholders and to protect government's own interests. And finally, it was passed in the parliament and now it has become an act. So let's see what it deals with. As the name itself tells you, it deals with personal data. It deals only with personal data. Now, what is personal data? How do you identify personal data? Personal data is any such data through which you can identify the individual behind the data. If the data is given to you, by looking at the data, if you can identify the living person behind it, if you can pinpoint that this is the individual who generated this data, then that is your personal data, which includes your name, your gender, your address, your workplace, your biometric details, your fingerprints, your iris retinal scans, your DNA samples, any data through which the person can be identified directly, that becomes your personal data. We are all contributing a lot of personal data to the government and also to private companies, right? To the banks, to the stock markets, to the stock brokers, to the social media companies, the tech companies, and every other entity you can think of, even government entities like UIDAI, which manages Aadhaar, IT department, right? Home Ministry, which conducts your census. The data collected in census is personal data. So any data which is digitally collected, processed, and transferred, any data connected to the individual through which you can identify the individual behind it becomes your personal data. So that is exactly what the law deals with. All right, it deals with digital data, not data which is manually written, but digital data collected through digital methods and processed and transferred and handled digitally. So this is connected to a person. If you can identify the person behind it, that becomes your personal data. So does it mean there is something called non-personal data as well? Yes or no? So if there is personal data, can there be something called non-personal data? Okay, most of you are saying yes. You're saying yes, there is non-personal data as well. Okay, fine, I'll accept this. Any example? Can you think of any example of what is non-personal data? It would be the opposite of it. Like film preference, choices and preference, Ola routes, Uber details. Okay, good. At least you guys have a basic idea. Good. Non-personal data is the opposite. Basically, there is a set of data, but by looking at it, you can't identify the person who generated it. It has been detached from the user, and the data is being used by the company to be monetized. I'll give you an example that makes it easier. I'm sure all of you ride cabs on Ola, Uber. You order food on Swiggy, Zomato, right? On all these apps, collectively, all of us, we are leaving behind a pattern. We are expressing our choices. It doesn't matter who's the person generating this data. Collectively, as a group, we are all creating a pattern, expressing our choices, which can be used by the company, the tech company, to give you more personalized services. Like, for example, let's say in a particular area, people are largely ordering biryani. In another area, people largely prefer coffee. And maybe there is a certain time where the orders hit a peak. There is a pattern. Let's say in a locality where residential areas or residential colonies are present, the nature of orders are different. In a area where you just have offices, companies, etc., the kind of orders being received will be different. So this data will help the company to understand the customers they are serving, to understand their patterns, their choices and behaviors. What time can we expect peak orders? What item will be the most ordered? What restaurant is the most preferred? What beverage is the most preferred? Understanding these broad patterns will help the company to monetize this data and give you personalized services. Now, today, for example, India-Pakistan match is going on. Swiggy, Zomato would be overwhelmed. If you don't believe me, open the app, check. You will not get orders delivered today. It becomes impossible. But the company can plan for it. Now that they know the pattern, that if there is a cricket match, orders will shoot up. It will skyrocket. And what will they order? People will not sit and order meals or these other items. Usually during matches, preferred items would be pizzas, right? Or even fried chicken, something like that. The patterns would be noticed by the algorithm, which is based on the non-personal data being generated by users. Now they put this non-personal data for monetization. They use it to innovate their product, to make their product better, to give you better, simple services. Your cab aggregators can do the same. They can understand the peak areas, the peak timings, ensure there are more cabs available at the right time. Correct? So this is how non-personal data helps you. It helps the companies, it helps the economy Monetizing non-personal data is crucial for the economy to drive innovation and to give you better services, personalized services. So for protecting non-personal data, a separate committee has been set up by the government. There is another committee for this. Any idea who heads this committee? Do you know which committee has been set up for this? To protect your non-personal data, to get some recommendations on this, the government is planning a separate policy for this. So to get recommendations on the issue, a committee has been set up. It's headed by a very popular individual. It's headed by Chris Gopalakrishnan. One of the co-founders of Infosys. So Chris Gopalakrishnan committee is looking into non-personal data. All right, just like Justice Sri Krishna committee looked into personal data, the Chris Gopalakrishnan committee is looking into your non-personal data. So now, under the act which has been passed, I'll tell you the key provisions. The act is recognizing two different entities: data principals, data fiduciaries. Data principals and data fiduciaries. All right. It defines who are data principals, who are data fiduciaries. The data principals are none other than the users. All of us, all individual users who are using any application contributing data to government and private entities. So we are the principals, meaning we are the owners of our data. This is a very, very important recognition. It was recommended by Sri Krishna committee. The users should be treated as the owners of the data. You own your data. That's why the term data principal, you are the principal here, owning your data. Now you are contributing your data to the government and private entities. So they become the fiduciaries who come in between. They are basically collecting your data, storing it. They will be handling the data, processing it. They could be transferring it as well to other third parties. So all these steps are carried out on your personal data. Once you contribute it, right from collection to storage, handling, processing, transferring, all these steps are involved in the management of your data. So under the law, data principals are getting some rights. To protect our data privacy and data security, some rights are being given to us, which means there are obligations on the fiduciaries to protect our rights. Private companies, including your social media companies and even government entities, some of them, they will get some obligations. They'll have some duties to protect your rights. That's how rights and duties work, right? Principals are getting the rights, users are getting the rights, which means the fiduciaries have some duties and obligations to fulfill. So one important right which is being accorded is the right to consent. Without your explicit consent, no one can collect your data. All right. Most companies already get your consent, but going forward, you will see some changes. The government has said a clear notice has to be given explaining what is consent, why they are collecting data. They should give some more details on how they are planning to use your data. So basically, an entire document will be given to you. This will happen very soon. See, right now you do see some terms and conditions. Whenever you download an app, it asks for some permissions, your approvals, your consent. You give approvals, only then you can download and use the app. But going forward, there will be more changes where the companies or any data collector has to clearly explain what is consent, why are they collecting your data, for what purpose, how will they use it, how will they monetize it. Those details have to be specifically mentioned, and that too in all 22 languages recognized under 8th schedule. So this is something you will see going forward. the implementation is still on hold. It will take some time because businesses need a lot of time to make the changes happen. So government has given that window. It will take some time before the act becomes fully enforceable. So you will notice in few months time that all the apps will revisit consent. You will be flooded with a list of consent notices. You will have to go through and then give your explicit approval to collect, store, handle, process, and transfer your data. All right. Or else you can't use their services. That's obvious. If you can't give your consent, meaning they can't collect your data, and without your data, what will they do? So you can't use those apps anymore. Either you give your consent or don't. Next, you will get the right to access your data as well. You can demand the fiduciary to give access to your data, every data that they have collected over you, on you. You can take a look at what kind of data is being logged in. This becomes a mandatory feature, right to access your data. It's not available right now. You don't know what data Instagram is collecting exactly, right? When you give the permissions, you know some data is being collected, but not the entire data which is being harvested. So right to access becomes mandatory. The companies will going forward, they will inform you on all the details. You can demand them to give access to see what data is being collected against you. If there are any mistakes, if the data is not accurate, you will have the right to correct your data. Let's say a bank has collected some data from you. All right, they've completed the KYC process, but on the back end, they've made mistakes in entering the data or in logging the data. Maybe your name is wrong, your age, right, your address, something is wrong. To ensure your data is accurate, to ensure you maintain accurate data to get the best services, you can seek the right to correct at any time you want. This becomes mandatory for everyone. All government, private entities have to provide the right to correct, where you can see if there is any wrong information about you and correct that data. Next, you're also getting the right to erasure. If you want to quit a platform, you don't want to use this anymore, you want to log out, delete the app, never come back again, you should have the right to be forgotten completely. Do you know this? Even if you delete your account, companies retain data on you. They still hold it for many, many years. They archive the data. They use it to train their algorithms, to train AI systems and generative AI platforms. So you should, if let's say you want to ensure you want to erase all your digital presence, tomorrow you decide to take a break from social media, you delete all the apps, right? But still they'll be holding your data. So when you have the option of right to be forgotten, the right to erasure, and you exercise the right, they have to prove this in a transparent manner that they are deleting, erasing all your data. So this will become a guaranteed right for you. All right. Then apart from this, there are other measures, other provisions like there will be a right to grievance redressal. If you're feeling violated, let's say you feel your rights have been violated. Let's say your data has been breached, your data privacy security has not been upheld by the fiduciary. Then you want your complaint to be addressed. So you can raise a grievance. Your grievances will be taken up by the Data Protection Board, which is being set up. A Data Protection Board is being constituted to enforce the law, to give directions to the fiduciaries, to resolve these grievances and disputes, and to also advise the government as well. A Data Protection Board has been set up, which will look into the grievances, and accordingly, it will look at violations. If any fiduciary is violating the law, it will levy strict penalties and deliver punishments. Not criminal, of course, but penalties and punishments will be a part of it. Data Protection Board will decide on this. It also provides for an appellate board. You can approach TDSAT, Telecom Dispute Settlement Appellate Tribunal, if you're not happy with the redressal by Data Protection Board. Even fiduciaries can appeal. If data fiduciaries, the companies, if they feel the Data Protection Board has not been fair, if they didn't get a fair judgment, they can go to the TDSAT, Telecom Dispute Settlement Appellate Tribunal, appeal the decisions here at a higher appellate body. So all these measures are being created for you, right, to protect your privacy, security, to place some obligations on the companies and government entities as well. You can even have a right to nominate. You can nominate someone else on your behalf in case of death or incapacity. Let's say you can't exercise your rights in old age or due to an accident or the person dies, right? But data will remain. What will happen to the data? Even after death, protecting data privacy is critical, right? So you would have the option of nominating someone else, your family or friend. You can nominate them to act on your behalf, who can exercise your rights to protect your data security, data privacy. These are the basic rights being provided. All right. Now, the problem here, there is one major shortcoming. There's a lot of criticism against the new act as well. The biggest criticism is that the government itself is giving exemptions from all these provisions. Whatever I explained, nothing will apply to security agencies and law enforcement agencies. They are fully exempted. On the grounds of national security, on the grounds of public order, even with regard to friendly relations with foreign countries. On these grounds, few notified government agencies like your intelligence, law enforcement, and even police, they can be fully exempted from all the provisions. None of the provisions will apply to them. So essentially, the government is giving itself the option of carrying out surveillance without being transparent about accountability. There is no transparency here regarding accountability. How will the government check the misuse of your data by intelligence law enforcement agencies? That is not clear. The government says there are internal mechanisms to prevent that, but it's not in the public domain. With regard to carrying out surveillance, to accessing someone's phone, to accessing someone's social media accounts, right? There are checks and balances. There are internal measures, internal approvals will be needed. If there is misuse, there will be accountability, but it's not known in the public domain. It's not very transparent here. So government has given itself a lot of exemptions from all the provisions on the grounds of security, public order, and friendly relations with other countries. So this is where a big criticism comes up. See, surveillance is needed, no doubt. For intelligence security agencies, they have to carry out surveillance to protect the country, to deal with security threats. But to what extent? Whereas private companies, they'll have full obligations, but the same will not apply for the government. And there are some practical concerns, like you can't ask UIDAI to erase your data. That's obvious. I think you can understand that. You can't ask IT department to erase all the data they have on you. You can't do that. So there are exceptions as well, right, with regard to right to erasure and right to correct. Because imagine tomorrow, let's say there is a terrorist who has contributed some data, right, and government wants to carry out surveillance on him. There's a suspected terrorist, but he might exercise right to erasure, get all the apps to delete his data. So that can't happen, right? So there is an exception here for all these rights. With regard to right to erasure, government can specify a time limit until which the data has to be held. Even if you exercise right to be forgotten, government will not allow it to happen in some cases. All right, because tomorrow those who misuse data, they can get it erased and wipe out the trail. So to ensure it doesn't happen, government can prescribe to the companies that even if right to forgotten is being exercised by a user, you can't delete it until this time. All right. So the government hasn't told us what would be the time limit, but government has retained this option where it can ask the companies to hold the data for law enforcement reasons, for security reasons. At the same time, the ease of doing business for companies has been addressed. Companies also have got a lot of benefits this time. Like, they need not get consent every single time. Let's say initially you have given consent, a broad overall consent. Next time they want to, let's say, make some changes or some, new innovations, or they want to use your data in a slightly different way, they need not come back to you every time asking consent, because this practically becomes problematic for the company. Companies, instead of focusing on innovation, they'll focus more on law, policy, and how to implement that. They'll get caught in paperwork, in consulting the legal advisors. So that's a trap. That's a trap for businesses. It becomes a regulatory hurdle. So to ensure it doesn't affect the business models, they need not get consent every single time. There's an exception being given. If the new changes which are happening in their product, if it is close to what consent previously was given, they can go ahead and assume that consent already exists. They can even transfer the data to third parties without getting your consent every time. Your data can be transferred to third party and even to foreign jurisdiction, which means government has given up on data localization. The law is not mandating data localization, which was the biggest concern of the companies and foreign governments. It means the government has fallen under pressure of these companies and foreign governments. The law doesn't specify mandatory data localization, even though we are encouraging them to set up data centers here, but it's not being made mandatory to protect business interests and also to protect trade secrets, to protect intellectual property rights. For all of that, there are exceptions under the law, which is helping in ease of doing business. So some experts say that it's a very balanced law compared to the previous version, but some are criticizing it because this could easily allow the government to conduct any amount of surveillance it wants, which could compromise your privacy and security at the end of the day. But definitely, private companies come under a lot of restrictions, especially tech companies, how they'll be using your data, right? They have to be very cautious. They have to abide by these provisions, or else they will face very strict punishments and penalties for this. Even startups, all the Indian tech companies, foreign companies, they will all follow this law going forward, and you will start seeing the changes as well. Since this is something that deals with our day-to-day life, you will start experiencing the changes. You will get these notices for your consent, right? You will see that the options for your right to access, correct, erasure, everything will be prominently shown on all the applications. So this is something you'll get to experience very soon once it comes into full enforcement. So it's a debatable topic, right? Like I said, government says this is a perfect law. It's a perfect law that balances all the interests. There are supporters of this argument. There are critics who are pointing out the flaws, the critical flaws, where exceptions have been given to government entities and even some private firms. So it's the user or the citizen at the end of the day who probably loses out on some rights. So maybe there is a need for greater clarity, but this is the act which Parliament has passed. It will be the act which will be enforced, right? So take a look at these provisions, be familiar with what rights the principals are getting, what duties the fiduciaries have, what exemptions are being provided. All right. And note down that Data Protection Board will be looking at the grievances, enforcing the law, and also levying the penalties. And there is an appellate process at TDSAT. These are the key provisions that you should be familiar with. You can definitely expect a question here, maybe mains or even prelims question. Now we come to the last topic here under media and social media. Let's complete this, and after that we can take a short break. Now someone, why don't you let me know the score? Even I'm curious. Last I saw someone mention it's 177 for 7. Let me know if you're watching. I'm sure many of you are still watching. Okay, second innings has started, 63 for 1. Great. Looks like India will win. Right? That's great news. because we have never lost a World Cup match to Pakistan. All right. Now let's look at the IT rules. The IT rules that was notified recently to regulate social media, OTT platforms, digital media, and even online gaming platforms. All these new age media platforms have been brought under strict regulation of the IT rules. We have something called the IT Act, Information Technology Act of 2000, which regulates the IT industry. We are going to study this in the next chapter. Under cybersecurity, I will discuss the IT Act. So under IT Act, you have a section 87, clause 2. It's under these powers that the government has brought out these new IT rules that supersedes the old rules of 2011. It's officially called Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. It was notified 2 years ago in 2021. It has already been amended, and even sectors like online real money gaming, that's your betting apps, all the online gaming apps and betting apps where real money is bet, is also brought under its regulation. So let's take a look. What rules will apply? Which entities will be governed by it? That is what we should understand. I've given all the details here. I'll explain this in a very simple manner as well. The new rules will apply, as I told you, for these segments, that is social media primarily, then digital media and OTT platforms. With the amendment, now it will apply for online real money gaming apps, where real money is used in games and betting, even they get covered with the amendment. Now, what is social media? You already know. Social networking sites, all your social media platforms, from YouTube to Twitter to Facebook, everything gets covered under social media. What are OTT platforms? It's nothing but your streaming services, the over-the-top streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Hotstar, Sony Live, right? We have an N number of streaming apps today. So they're all called OTT platforms, where they're directly streaming content onto your devices. Then comes your digital media. Digital media is those news outlets, media outlets, which only have a digital presence. Like, for example, have you heard of Swarajya, The Scroll, Print, The Wire? All these are news outlets, media outlets, but they only have a digital presence, meaning they don't print a newspaper or a magazine. They don't have a TV channel or any other form of communication. They only have a digital presence. They communicate news only on internet platforms, through their websites, through their applications. So they are not regulated under the existing rules and regulations we have. Like newspapers, for example, they fall under the press concerned press regulatory bodies. Televisions, all the TV news channels, they fall under industry association bodies which regulate the broadcasting agencies, right? Information Broadcasting Ministry has some regulatory powers over them. But your digital media was never regulated. These only digital presence media platforms, they were not regulated. So they also have been brought under the IT rules. So a separate set of rules applies for all these entities. And the reason why the rules were brought out, were notified, is because there were very serious concerns about misuse of these platforms. From misusing social media for creating security problems and law and order problems, we saw that many criminal activities were being aided by these platforms. Like on social media, there was a risk of, risk of drug trafficking, a risk of circulating child pornography. On digital media and OTT platforms, there is a risk where content can be shown or promoted which is leading to law and order problems, which could instigate violence, which could threaten the security of the state, right? Which could lead to anti-national activities, essentially. So to govern all these platforms and ensure that such misuse does not happen, there were many pushes given by the Supreme Court and the Parliament. Since we didn't have any regulatory measures here, the Supreme Court made some serious observations in 2018, pointing out that on the internet, it has become very easy to circulate such objectionable videos and content, which affects the dignity of the victim, especially in case of child pornography, rape cases, and other cases where your privacy has been breached. If such videos are easily circulated with no consequences, the platforms are not even accountable for it, right? And the users might get full anonymity as well. Because of the nature of technology, users become anonymous. So this was seen as a threat to law and order, a threat to the victims as well, and to their dignity. That is why Supreme Court gave a push to the government to regulate social media, to regulate all these media platforms. Even a committee of the Rajya Sabha in 2020 had made a similar observation, saying that the content on these platforms is becoming problematic. It is threatening the society, threatening our security and law and order. So it became important to identify the originator of messages, especially fake news. If fake news and rumors are leading to actual violence on the ground, affecting law and order and threatening our security, then it's important to identify who originated the message, who created this message, who was the first one to circulate this on the platform, right? They are the culprits. You need to get hold of them. But companies wouldn't reveal this data by citing right to privacy and data privacy and data security. They wouldn't give this information to police and law enforcement agencies. They weren't helping security agencies in identifying the originator of the message. So that's why Rajya Sabha's ad hoc committee had pointed out that we should bring some rules to regulate these platforms so we can mandate them to help the authorities in tracing the originator of the message. OTT platforms, which became widely popular in the last decade, right, became the preferred medium of choice for many viewers, millions of viewers in the country. So again, here there was no regulation. I&B ministry was exercising some regulatory power, but legally, I&B ministry didn't have complete jurisdiction over them. So because of all these deficiencies in our legal landscape, new rules became necessary, and that is why the IT rules were notified in 2021. It primarily applies for social media, digital news or digital media, and OTT. Through the new amendment, it will apply for online gaming. Is that clear? Now, let us see what are the rules. Let's take a brief look. Your social media firms. First, we'll talk about social media. All right, we'll take them up one by one. We'll take up the 4 categories one by one. With regard to social media, companies are divided into 2 categories. Social media intermediaries, significant social media intermediaries. The first category refers to small and very small companies, which have only few thousand, few lakh subscribers. Significant social media intermediaries are the ones which have millions of subscribers or millions of users. That's the difference. Just a few thousand or lakh subscribers are there for small companies, meaning they can't undergo strict restrictions and regulations. They can't focus on, obliging by these regulations. They'll lose their business model. They'll have to invest a lot, which could affect their businesses. So that is why these small companies have very limited rules on them, very limited regulations on them. That will protect ease of doing business as well. Without threatening the business model, it will help them in cooperating with the authorities to deal with security problems. So that's why the small platforms, which have very few subscribers, they have few restrictions, very limited rules on them. But the significant ones, which have millions of users, since they have the biggest impact on security, so they are under very strict restrictions right now. Strict rules apply for them because they have the money as well, the capital to make the changes happen. So now these companies have to show due diligence, meaning they will become accountable for the content which they host on their platforms. See, the previous legal provision was that to encourage these companies to come to India, to operate in India, to drive the digital expansion, We gave them a legal immunity. A safe harbor had been created under Section 79 of the IT Act, according to which the platforms are not accountable. They are not accountable for content hosted on their platform. This was a fair exception that was made to drive the growth of social media in India. It was critical to drive the growth of social media because, see, on social media, it's the users who are creating content. Now, it's not YouTube or Facebook who are posting objectionable videos. It's the users who might be posting it. Now, if you hold the companies accountable for it, if you press criminal charges against them and arrest their officers and punish them for it, no company will come to India to operate, right? They would have never entered the Indian market. So to drive the initial growth, we gave a safe harbor. A legal immunity was given to drive the IT digital sector, the internet-based tech industry. They got an exemption under Section 79 of the IT Act. It's called a safe harbor. By citing this provision, they could hide safely. Even if cases came up at the court, the platform could say that we are not accountable for what content users are posting. Right? What can we do if users are posting objectionable material? Later, we might take it down, but we can't be held accountable just because they're posting it on our platform. That was the legal immunity given. It was necessary. Trust me, it's not a weak provision. It was necessary to drive growth in the industry, or else no companies would have come to India if you had threatened them with criminal charges. But now that the industry has grown, it's time for them to take accountability for this. Now that they're having a huge impact on the society, on the economy, right? There are miscreants, criminals misusing their platforms, creating security threats. It's time they showed due diligence. It is time that they should act against objectionable content. Meaning they should have provisions where such content can be reported. There should be methods through which such content can be taken down. Such accounts should be blocked. They should also cooperate with law enforcement, with police and intelligence agencies when required. Not just to shut down the accounts and take down the post, but also to trace the first originator. If someone is posting a video containing child pornography, which is a very serious offense, if someone is circulating rape videos, right, this is a serious threat, a serious law and order problem. So companies have to work with the authorities to track down these originators. If someone's message led to a riot, if someone's message led to a mob lynching, right, the originator will have to be punished. Criminal charges have to be brought on them. So in such cases, now it is mandatory for these companies to show due diligence. They can't claim legal immunity anymore. Meaning, if they don't show due diligence, then the immunity will go away. Understood? Legal immunity exists even now. Section 79 of IT Act, giving safe harbor to IT companies, still exists. It's not been removed. It will be removed for that company if it does not cooperate, if it does not show due diligence. Meaning, if it breaks the new IT rules, then the safe harbor will not apply and criminal charges can be pressed against the officials of the company. Against the representatives of the company, criminal charges can be pressed. They can be arrested, they'll go to jail because they will be held equally liable for the content that they are carrying on their platform if they don't cooperate, if they don't show due diligence. This is a very, very big change which has been introduced. So they are mandated right now to set up a grievance redressal mechanism. This already existed with all the big companies. Right now, it's only being made mandatory. That's the only change. In all platforms, you can raise a grievance. It's already there. You can report. If you find something objectionable, you can flag the post, you can report it, you can classify it as well, saying this is fake news, hate speech, promoting suicidal content, or sexually explicit material. You can flag such content and they will act against it. They have an internal grievance mechanism. So now it's being made mandatory. There should be a grievance officer whose details are publicly available. And within 24 hours, they should acknowledge that your grievance is received. Within 15 days, they should resolve your grievance and give you a reply whether what action they have taken. The action is up to them. Government will not interfere here. They can take it down or they may not take it down, depending on their community guidelines. It's up to them. They can decide. But whatever action they take, they should inform the person who raised the grievance. These provisions already exist. If you have ever reported a post, if you haven't, please do it. Open your friend's account, right? Click on his post and report his post. You will immediately get a acknowledgement. You will get an acknowledgement saying your report has been received. We'll look into it. Our review teams are looking into it. Some posts are automatically reviewed through the algorithms. Some are manually reviewed by fact-checking teams which are sitting behind your screens. So if they find the post to be objectionable, if it's going against their community guidelines, like if there is a violent video showing murder, if there is hate speech against a community, right, such content will be taken down. They'll take it down immediately. They'll block that post, warn that account holder. If they show repeated violations, the account will be blocked as well. That person will never be allowed to open an account. If it's not violating their guidelines, they'll not take it down. But whatever action they take, they will inform you. Within 2-3 days, you'll get a notification saying that this is the action we have taken. All right. So government has given them 15 days to work on it, 24 hours to acknowledge the receipt. This is now mandatory, but companies have already done it. All the big companies, they already have this feature. Only thing is they need to appoint a grievance officer. Mandatorily, there should be a grievance officer with the details available on their websites, on their applications. Next, they are obligated to ensure the safety, dignity of the users. If intimate videos are being circulated, if the complaint comes up, within 24 hours, they have to take down the content. Especially, there is a very disturbing trend where rape videos, gang rape videos are shot and sold and circulated on social media. They go viral, right? This has to be tackled immediately. It's a threat to women's safety and their dignity, right? It abuses the victim even after the horrific rape incident. So this is where companies have to act very strictly. And the complaint can be raised not just by the victim who has been raped, but by any other individual on their behalf. Because women would be hesitant, the victims of such violence they would be naturally hesitant to raise the complaint. So family members or any concerned person can raise the issue. Let's say you find any such objectionable videos, you can raise a complaint and within 24 hours they should take it down. All right. Another disturbing trend is revenge porn, where couple have broken up and because of the grudge they have against the other partner, they release the sexually explicit videos to humiliate them or later to blackmail them and threaten them. So any such videos which affects the dignity of women especially, right, or any victim in general, even if it's men, right, who's the victim here, such content has to be taken down within 24 hours to protect the dignity of the user. The other diligence factors will apply for only significant social media intermediaries. Now, whatever we discussed till now, they apply for all social media companies, be it small, be it the significant ones. But going forward, all the points I'll mention, they'll apply only for the large companies, only for significant social media companies. They need to appoint a chief compliance officer who will be resident Indian, meaning they should be in India, in an Indian office, not sitting abroad. They should have an office in India, registered office. The details should be made available. If the government wants to contact, we should know whom to contact, where the office is, who's the person. The details should be very clear. There should be a resident grievance officer, as we discussed, and the compliance officer will publish reports, monthly reports, and submit this to the government showing how they are complying with the IT rules. The chief compliance officer should be a resident Indian who will be the nodal contact person for the government. A resident grievance officer to look into all the grievances users are raising. These two posts have to be created. These two officials have to be appointed by the company. They should both be in India, in an Indian office. Their details should be known to the government and to the public. The compliance officer will file compliance reports showing how the company is complying with IT rules. How did they act against complaints? Which post did they take down? What was the time taken to acknowledge the request? How quickly they solved these grievances? All that reports have to be submitted to the government to show that the companies are following the rules. Grievance officer, as you know, will look into grievances, right? And accordingly, what action has been taken should be communicated. The other important feature that will apply for the big, significant social media companies is to help trace the originator if there is a threat to law and order, if there is a security threat to the sovereignty, integrity of the nation, to security of India, or friendly ties with foreign governments, or to public order. So basically, if there is any hate speech, if there is direct incitement to violence, any content related to terrorism, radicalism, fundamentalism, any such criminal activity, right, will be flagged by the authorities. When authorities reach out to them, be it intelligence agencies, police, or any law enforcement, if they reach out to them through legal routes, they have to help them trace the first originator, right? If they don't have a feature, they have to create that feature. See, right now, most companies, they say that we have end-to-end encryption. This is true. They are giving you utmost secrecy by providing end-to-end encryption, meaning from your device to the recipient's device, the whole communication channel is encrypted with very high level of encryption. It's almost impossible to break it. Even with supercomputers, it becomes impossible to break it. The company itself can't see that. The developer of the algorithm, they themselves can't see what you're communicating. Like WhatsApp, it has end-to-end encryption. Telegram has end-to-end encryption. The owners of Telegram or WhatsApp, they themselves cannot see what you're communicating. It's impossible. That is how it is designed, right? Even if they want to crack the encryption, if they have to de-encrypt this, it's going to take hundreds of years. No one will even live by them. Even if you use our most advanced supercomputers, it will take many years to crack it. So intelligence agencies like NTRO, right, IB and RAW, they do have tools to break encryption. But again, not this high level of encryption. They will face challenges even with such applications. Even though they can intercept most of the communication on the internet, they will face a challenge with end-to-end encrypted apps. This is where we want the companies to tone down the encryption. We want them to create some measure where they can find out the originator and give us the details as well regarding the message. So now the government is making it mandatory, which means they have to make changes in their product, make changes into the algorithm to figure out a way in which safely they can figure out who's the originator when it is really needed for law and order and for security of the nation. Next, of course, any unlawful information which is flagged by the government should be removed. Now, this is highly controversial. What if the government only flags posts by critics, opposition, journalists, and activists? This is part of our right to free speech. I might criticize the government, right? I might blame the government as well for some mistakes and problems. That's my fundamental right. It's your basic democratic right. Tomorrow, if the government says that this is unlawful, it's a threat to law and order, or gives excuses like that and orders the company to take it down, companies will be forced to take it down. They'll have no other option. Let's say there's a video on YouTube. All right. Government feels it is unlawful or a threat to the security of the state. Without questions asked, the company has to take it down. They'll have no redressal. Only thing they can do is approach the court later, right? But once they get the notice, they have to take it down, block the content. Maybe then they can go to the judiciary, which will again take its own sweet time. Essentially, government gets the power of censorship with this provision. That is why it is heavily criticized. There is fear that this could lead to censorship, where government might flag any content which is critical of the government and its leaders. Let's say you post something criticizing a government leader, or let's say there is a journalist writing articles exposing the government. That is their basic right. It's your democratic right to do that, right? So that is not any security threat. It's not any threat to the nation or to the state. This is a basic democratic right. But government can invoke these provisions and say that it's unlawful and ask them to take it down. So this could cripple free speech and expression. It's a threat to Article 19. That's why there is such a big controversy about the IT rules. Now coming to OTT. For OTT platforms, the government has minimal interference. Here the government is promoting self-regulation, self-classification and self-regulation. Because this is an area where creativity should be encouraged and promoted. Government shouldn't excessively interfere. So industry itself is being encouraged to make changes like self-classification of content according to the material present in the movies or the web series or the documentaries that they're streaming. Now, this is something OTT platforms had already done even before the rules came in. Like when you, let's say you watch a movie or a web series on any platform, Netflix or Hotstar or Amazon Prime, at the very start, a disclaimer is issued saying this particular movie will have, it'll have foul language or extreme violence or drug abuse or smoking or sexual acts, nudity. That is clearly specified. So if you want to watch, you can go ahead and watch. They use the standardized ratings as well. Adult, universal, 7 plus, 13 plus, 16 plus. This is the standard for classifying content, and now this is being made mandatory. But many platforms were already doing it on their own. Parental lock, to ensure parents can lock out certain content which is adult content. A-rated content can be locked out for children, so they are not exposed to adult content. This again is an inbuilt feature. It's already there. Most companies already had this feature. Now the government is making it mandatory. The ratings have to be clearly displayed to the user. All right. The ratings describing the content has to be clearly displayed. So whether the user wants to watch or not, they can decide at the very beginning. This is again this is something they've already done. But there could be others who still haven't implemented. So that's why the rules were brought out. Mandatory rules for classification, parental lock, rating, etc. Now coming to digital media. Digital media is the equivalent of your press, where the right to press will apply, the right to free press will apply. If you look at newspapers, if you look at your magazines, other traditional media like radio, television, here the interference of government is minimal. It should be minimal because media is the fourth pillar of your democracy. Media is the one which keeps check on the abuses of the government, the legislature, and even the judiciary. So it's very critical to protect the right to free press. If you look at newspapers, they come under Press Council of India, the PCI, which acts as a self-regulatory body. Right? The government has a minimal role in Press Council, and where most self-regulation is promoted within newspapers and within the industry. There are basic journalistic norms and codes which are laid out by the Press Council, and that's followed by all the reputed media outlets by and large. Television networks are under the Cable TV Regulation Act. They also have their own industry broadcasting associations where they self-regulate the content. Right? The government doesn't excessively interfere because this is media. The media has a right to free press where the government shouldn't be meddling. So on similar lines, for digital news as well, a 3-level grievance redressal mechanism focused on self-regulation has been introduced. A 3-tier grievance redressal mechanism. At level 1, each publisher will have to self-regulate. Like each platform, Swarajya, Scroll, Print, The Wire, and many more. There are plenty of digital news outlets today. They only have a digital presence. So first, they have to self-regulate. They should have a platform where they can receive complaints from their readers. If readers have a complaint about a fact, if readers have a complaint about some article which is objectionable according to them, there should be an internal mechanism to receive the complaint and review it and act on it. So each news company will have a self-regulatory mechanism. They have to create this on their own. Second level, at the industry level, all the publishers collectively should form an association, provide for self-regulation at the industry level. So if your complaint is not resolved by the publisher, then you can approach the industry association where the self-regulatory body is present. You can appeal against that. Then finally, if the first two levels did not resolve your grievance, you can approach the third level where the government appoints a committee, an oversight mechanism. Now, this is where another controversy has come up. Ideally, government should be playing no role in the media. Government should stay away as far as possible from the media. That is how right to free press can be protected. Self-regulation by publishers is fine. Level 1 regulation is absolutely fine. Level 2 regulation is also fine because that is how newspapers and TV channels are being regulated, through industry level bodies where self-regulation is done by the media. But the third level is dangerous. Government is giving itself a role to appoint an oversight mechanism, meaning government officials, government nominees will be appointed, and most likely they will favor the ruling parties. If there are articles in these platforms criticizing the government and the leaders, and if they order to take it down, it has to be taken down. So a strong criticism has come up, controversy has erupted, that government is curbing the right to free press and free speech. So that is why IT rules became very problematic when it was notified. It triggered a big controversy. Now, through the latest amendment, which was done, online real money gaming has also been brought under it. Because today, gaming apps, betting apps have become notoriously popular. From young students to old age people, a lot of people are involved in betting apps where real money is bet, where games are played with real money. This is extremely dangerous. Not just because it is addictive, it could lead to economic loss. It could lead to fraudulent practices. It could encourage criminal activities. And more importantly, it can enable money laundering, which is tied with criminal activities and terror financing. So there is a real concern about online real money gaming, all the gaming apps and even the betting apps. So this is where some rules have been brought in to ensure that these threats, these issues are minimized. The government is again going for self-regulation. It doesn't want to restrict or limit the industry. It's asking the companies which develop these apps to self-regulate and form industry level self-regulatory bodies to determine what kind of apps should be allowed, what kind of apps should be banned. There are certain betting applications which are dangerous. It threatens your financial stability, right? Some of them could be extremely addictive, especially for children. They could be led on the wrong path. It could enable criminal activities going all the way till money laundering. So the company and the industry level bodies should take a call whether the app should be allowed or not. All right, so self-regulation is being promoted with grievance redressal. If people lose money, if they are duped, there should be grievance redressal where the grievances are addressed by the company and the industry level self-regulatory bodies. All right, so such basic rules have been imposed on online real money gaming apps as well. So this completes my discussion on role of media, social media, and all the related topics. All right, I hope you have understood everything. Now let's take a short break. Before I start the next chapter, let's take a 15 minutes break. It's almost 7:05. Let's come back. Welcome back to the session. So first, let me look at some doubts and questions from the previous chapter. And after that, we'll start with the basics of cybersecurity. Let us see what questions have come up. Just give me a minute. I'm taking a look at the questions and I'll pick them up one by one. Vivek is asking, sir, how to monitor OTT apps? See, on OTT platforms, let's say you find some content to be objectionable, right? If it breaches the agreed guidelines, you can report such content. That's why the self regulatory grievance redressal mechanism has been provided, where you can report the content. The companies will have their own internal mechanisms, self regulatory mechanisms. So they should act accordingly. Next, if you're not happy with their redressal, you can approach the industry level self regulatory mechanisms, right? And the government itself, through Ministry of Information Broadcasting, will try to maintain some regulation. But here the regulation will be limited because it shouldn't curb creativity and freedom of expression. So limited self-regulation is being promoted for OTT platforms. Devasmita, this is where, right? In case of some online games, real money will be used to bet. But there are some games which are fine, which are acceptable, like your fantasy leagues, where you form your cricket teams, your soccer teams, and you bet, right? Such games are still acceptable, but as long as it's not leading to financial losses where there is fraudulent activities involved. But there are some betting apps which are outright dangerous, outright illegal, right? Because betting is banned, right? Such betting apps are not allowed. But again, there is a legal vacuum here when it comes to the online world. Since we have been a little behind in bringing about laws and regulations, many of these apps have flourished. There are several illegal apps as well. For example, if you look at the recent Mahadev app controversy, where the promoters, they made thousands of crore rupees in profit. It was an entirely illegal operation. Now they have come under the scanner of Enforcement Directorate. So there are legal vacuums here which needs to be plugged. So government is also thinking of a separate law to deal with all forms of online betting. Right now, the IT rules provides some regulation at least for the online real money gaming sector. But going forward, the government might act more strictly regarding these betting applications. You're right. The law deals with digital personal data, where data is collected digitally, processed and handled digitally. Anything that's manually entered, that doesn't cover, or it's not covered under the law itself. If you're talking about your marks cards, your degree certificates, if there are incorrect entries, of course, not your marks, if your name or your date of birth is wrong, that you can always get it corrected through your respective universities and colleges. Femina is mentioning the recent NewsClick controversy by Chinese intelligence, running Chinese influence operations, where all the articles were designed to favor China and target India. But again, it will be a very difficult accusation to prove. The government has said that NewsClick journalists have received funds from Chinese sponsors to carry out this propaganda against India. So they have been charged under terror laws, under UAPA, right? Many journalists have been arrested. But again, it's about whether the government can find evidence to link these activities. So prosecution will depend entirely on that. But yeah, the controversy, the NewsClick controversy, is related to the same issue regarding how media can be misused by hostile actors to influence, to carry out propaganda. Chituri is asking, how can government move against Section 79 as there is an immunity provided? See, the safe harbor, the legal immunity under IT Act applies for all the tech companies, all the IT companies, social media firms. That immunity is there even now. It does not change. Only if social media companies don't follow these rules, the IT rules, if they don't show due diligence, which is if they don't cooperate with the authorities to take down unlawful content, if they don't help in tracing the first originator of messages which has led to violence, right? Or if they don't appoint chief compliance officer, the grievance officers, only if they don't follow these rules, only then the government will conclude that the company is not showing due diligence, and then the government will have the power to revoke the safe harbor. The legal immunity can be revoked under Section 79, which means the authorities can press criminal charges against the government, against the company officials. The chief compliance officer, grievance officers, the nodal officer can be arrested. They can be arrested and charges can be filed against them and punished accordingly as per the criminal laws. Specifics will be given, like how will the board be constituted, who would be the members, what are their exact powers, that will be defined by the government through the rules. The government, which mainly maintains your Aadhaar data, was also operating in a legal vacuum, correct? So as it deals with your personal data, even these government entities will fall under these obligations. So the recent data breach regarding Aadhaar, which you're talking about, was a result of a cyber hack where the data was stolen and leaked in Telegram. So the government has said it was not a data breach. It's just a publicly available data which was taken and released on Telegram. But others are saying it was data which was personal data and it was unauthorizedly access was given in an unauthorized manner and then leaked into the public domain. So previously such excuses could have been given by the government, but going forward, the law will apply to government entities as well. UIDAI will also fall under the Data Protection Act. So if you become a victim of data breach, if your data privacy, data security has been compromised by private entity or government entity, you can file a grievance. You can approach the Data Protection Board for justice. If you're not happy with it, you can approach the appellate tribunal. And even after that, if you don't have a resolution, you can approach the judiciary all that anytime. All right. So guys, these were some questions. Now let's move on and let's look at the next chapter. We'll be looking at the basics of cybersecurity. We have to understand why cybersecurity is important. What are the threats in the cyber domain, right? How are citizens affected by it? How can our country, our national security be affected by cyber threats? What are the different types of cyber threats that exist? Why is it so challenging to ensure cybersecurity? What institutions do we have? What legal measures we have to improve our cybersecurity? All these topics have to be covered. So let's start and cover as many topics as possible today till 8:30 p.m. And next week we have the remaining classes where we will wrap up all these chapters. So let's start with some basic concepts. Cyberspace is nothing but your virtual internet space. The internet itself is nothing but a network of connected devices. It's a network of connected devices. It's a peer-to-peer network where all the devices you're using, your laptops, your desktop computers, mobile phones, everything which is a network, which is connected to the internet, right, will be further connected with servers and data centers. So this peer-to-peer virtual network is essentially your internet, the virtual world. This constitutes your cyberspace. Now, there are many threats in the cyberspace where the data could be hacked by criminals, by hostile elements. They can breach the security of your device or the network, and they can steal sensitive data. They can get hold of sensitive data, which can be later misused in many different ways. So these cyber threats that exist, such as cyber crimes, cyber espionage, cyber warfare, they pose a threat to your data privacy, your well-being, and as well as to the country's national security. Today, it has become a very difficult challenge to guard and protect the cyberspace. The threats are evolving constantly. Cyberspace no longer remains just a civilian space. It has become a military domain. It has become militarized. When internet started out, when the initial foundation for the internet was laid, right? The initial vision was to make it a civilian space. If you look at the history of the internet, there were two parallel projects that were running in the United States. One was a defense project of the US Department of Defense, where they were building an initial network called ARPANET. ARPANET was designed by the US DoD to provide for military communication, to allow the armed forces to communicate better, to allow the command headquarters to reach out to the troops on the ground and communicate and share information through virtual mediums. While this defense project was going on, parallelly, a civilian project was coming up where researchers were trying to create a virtual network, interconnect the computers where exchange of information could happen. The initial idea was to connect research institutions, universities, colleges, etc., so that educational content, research material, they could all be shared with each other. Now, if you look at the commercialization of internet as well, which started from late 80s and 1990s, the cyberspace was primarily intended to be a civilian space, mainly for exchange of information, commercial transactions, etc. But parallelly, the increasing usage of cyberspace in the military domain has today turned cyberspace into a domain of warfare. It has become the fifth domain or the fifth dimension where wars are being fought. This is not some futuristic stuff. It's not something of science fiction. It's already happening. It's already happened. Traditionally, there were three dimensions where war was fought. That is land, water, right? Land and water were the initial dimensions where we fought conflicts. Then came air with the evolution of aircrafts. So as technology advanced, we kept creating more dimensions of warfare. Traditionally, we humans have fought wars on land and water as well, as naval technology developed, shipbuilding technology developed. Then with aviation came air-based combat. Then came outer space, your fourth dimension of warfare. Starting from the Cold War era, US and Soviet Union, they militarized outer space by developing military capabilities in space. Today, even India, China have military capabilities in outer space. Apart from having military satellites for surveillance and for communication, right? Today, you have weapons in outer space. You can potentially deploy missiles and nuclear weapons in outer space. You can use anti-satellite weapons to knock out enemy satellites in orbit. So very few countries have these capabilities like US, Russia, India, and China, leading to complete militarization of outer space. Now we have seen the fifth dimension coming up in the last 3 decades, which is your cyberspace. Countries realized in an interconnected world where almost every sector of the economy, where every key institution is connected to the internet, it is possible to launch these virtual attacks, to collect sensitive data, to spy on other countries, to carry out espionage, and even to bring down those networks and cause physical harm in the real world. So cyber warfare today has become a very potent, dangerous weapon, which is being used actively in conflicts around the world. Look at Russia-Ukraine war, which is going on. It's not just a physical war. There is a cyber war involved as well, which has been going on for many years. From 2014 itself, Russia has been waging a cyber war campaign against Ukraine. Look at the Israel-Hamas conflict. There is a cyber element involved, right? In any major war or conflict that you see today, cyber war is an integral part of it. Even during India-China border tensions, cyber war was reported. Between India-Pakistan, right? There are cyber attacks which happen with a geopolitical dimension. So the moment governments realize the potential of the domain, it has been heavily militarized. And even criminals, organized criminals have come up today who are capable of carrying out sophisticated attacks on your systems and networks to steal sensitive information. So even though cyberspace has transformed the world, it has transformed the economy, it has transformed our day-to-day lives, right? None of us can imagine a day without the internet, correct? Every sector of the economy depends on the internet. So there are many benefits, many advantages. At the same time, there are many challenges, many threats as well. Cyber warfare is a reality. Cyber crimes have gone up exponentially, which threatens our financial and well-being and safety. Then cyber espionage has become a reality as well, which threatens our national security. So dealing with cybersecurity is no longer a choice. It is mandatory. If you have to protect your interest, your well-being at an individual level or at the government level, cybersecurity is must. If you want to remain safe from cyber criminals, from cyber attacks, at your individual personal level, you have to focus on cybersecurity. Ensure your networks, your phones, your computers are safe. Similarly, private companies, right? They need to protect their systems. They need to protect their trade secrets, their intellectual property from hackers and criminals. Governments have to focus on cybersecurity to protect their cyberspace, their critical infrastructure, to counter cyber wars and cyber espionage. So it's no longer a choice. In the last 25, 30 years, cybersecurity has become a mandatory requirement. But however, cybersecurity is very challenging. With regard to cybersecurity, there is nothing called as 100% security or foolproof security. It does not exist. There's nothing called foolproof security. Or you can't ensure 100% security. It has become impossible because that is the very nature of cyberspace. So to know why it is very challenging and why you can't ensure 100% foolproof security, you should know the features of cyberspace. UPSC may ask a 10-mark mains question asking you to discuss why cybersecurity is very challenging or why foolproof security can't be ensured in cyberspace, why cybersecurity is constantly evolving. Such basic questions can be asked. And to answer this, you should know the basic features of the cyberspace. The characteristic of the cyberspace is such that foolproof cybersecurity is a myth. It does not exist. Because, one, there is an absence of geographical boundaries and jurisdiction here. In the physical world, in the real world, you know where India starts, India ends. You know where other countries start and end because our boundaries are defined, jurisdictions are defined. So when your jurisdiction and your geographical boundaries are clear, you can enforce the laws, enforce the authority of the government. But in cyberspace, this does not exist. It's a virtual space, right? There are no clear-cut boundaries. There are no clear-cut jurisdictions. It's largely a global cyberspace that exists. Even though you can point out the internet node points, you can't really define that this is exclusively Indian cyberspace, that this is exclusively American cyberspace. You can't do that. Those geographical barriers don't exist here. In case of a cyber attack, it is very difficult to attribute the attack and locate where the attack originated from. Because on the internet, you can become completely anonymous. You can hide your identity. You can mask your actual location from where you're operating. You can mask the IP address of your system, thereby guaranteeing complete anonymity to the attacker. All right, a cyber criminal, or let's say a group sponsored by a government waging cyber war or conducting cyber espionage, they can completely hide their location. They can use proxy servers. You might have heard of VPNs, virtual private networks, and proxy servers, to bounce their locations from different locations around the world. Initially, the attack might appear to be coming from Pakistan. But if you look further, you will see that it's only a proxy, right? You will see that the attack bounces off to Brazil or Spain, then China, Russia. So they can bounce locations across the world through multiple locations, through VPNs and proxy servers, and mask their location and IP address completely. Identities can be easily concealed, right? You can become anonymous on the internet. So this makes attribution very difficult. If you don't know who the attacker is or where the attack is coming from, right? And if you don't know the jurisdictions and the boundaries, how will you deter the attacker? How will you retaliate? These are traditional security concepts in the security world, right? Traditionally, one way of securing your region is by building deterrence against the threat, right? You build those capabilities, attack capabilities, offensive capabilities, to show that the other side, to show the other side that you can retaliate and carry out massive attacks. That will act as a deterrent. It will prevent the attacker from launching the first strike. So deterrence and retaliation is a basic security concept through which you can protect your security. You can threaten the attacker. You can ensure the attacker doesn't launch the first attack because there is always a fear of retaliation. Deterrence and retaliation will work only when you know the location and the attacker. If you know who's the attacker, who's sponsoring it, who's carrying it out, from which location, only then you can deter them and retaliate against them. In cyberspace, none of this is possible. Due to anonymity, lack of jurisdiction, and the complete masking of location and IP address, it is almost impossible to find out who carried out the attack, where it came from. So your regular concepts of security will not work here. What concepts you apply in the physical world, like deterrence, retaliation, that will not work or apply here in the cyber domain. So you need different methods to ensure your cyber security. Then also, technology is so rapidly evolving in the computing domain, in the communication domain, that every day there is a new threat which is emerging. Now, today you might get the best cybersecurity possible for your network and your systems. By tomorrow, it can become outdated with a new cyber weapon. The technology is rapidly, constantly evolving here. So you can't assume that you are safe. Just because you made some investments today, made yourself secure today, that is no guarantee that you're safe tomorrow. So you have to keep evolving with the trend. As new threats emerge, you have to keep adapting to the situation and keep improving your cybersecurity because it is a very dynamic world. Is that clear? The cyber criminals are finding new ways to hack into systems. New cyber warfare weapons are being developed, right? New vulnerabilities are being exposed in the hardware, the software, and in the networks. So given the risk here, you need to stay up to date on a daily basis. Your cybersecurity itself becomes very dynamic. That is why there is no guarantee that a system is fully secure. You can't say that there is 100% cybersecurity. That is the biggest challenge. Foolproof cybersecurity doesn't exist. It's a myth. No matter what measures you take, there might be some loopholes which the attacker will figure out and exploit. So the only thing you can do here is be up to date, be dynamic. Your cybersecurity should also be evolving with the threats. Understood? And you should develop the capabilities to detect the attack and try to deter the attack. You should not only develop defensive options to defend, but you should also have offensive options to retaliate. So this is where cybersecurity becomes very, very challenging. Is that clear? It requires constant attention and constant investments. Now, let us understand the very basic process involved in a cyber attack. What happens in a cyber attack? What are the basics involved here? Right? What happens in a cyber attack and what methods are used by the attacker to gain this access into your system and your devices? Because there could be a prelims question as well. Based on some of these basic concepts, prelims or even a small mains question can be asked, a 10-mark main question. So let's understand how attackers gain access into your devices. What are the basic processes involved here? What are the different types of cyber attacks that we have seen? All right, so that's something we'll be studying. It will get a little technical, but I'll keep it as simple and basic as possible. UPSC does not expect you to become a cyber security expert, right? So, especially non-science, non-engineering students, don't worry. This is not just for engineers, it's not just for software and IT engineers. Trust me, many of them also have very limited knowledge about cybersecurity unless they are really professionals and experts in it. So UPSC is not expecting you to become a professional or an expert. You just need a basic understanding. So we don't have to get too technical, but of course, some technical words will be used to explain what is a cyber attack, to understand what are the different types of malwares and different methods of attacks which are existing today. So let's start with the basics. How does an attacker gain access? What do they do to gain access into your devices, into your networks? Let's look at this. In a cyber attack, the attacker is looking at the hardware that you're using, the software which is running on your device, which is your operating system, and also all the applications, which are also softwares essentially, all the applications that you're running on your device, and the network to which you're connected. It could be a Wi-Fi network, it could be your mobile service provider providing you internet service as well, right? It could be your mobile data basically, or it could be you could be connected to a LAN network in an office space or in an educational institution, in a government office, etc. So this essentially constitutes your computer network, right? Your computer network includes your hardware, maybe your mobile phone, your smartphones, your laptops, your tablets, right? And your desktop computers, everything, all the electronic devices that you use. They all run on some basic softwares, including the operating system and the applications you're running, and you're connected to some network to access the internet. So this essentially constitutes your computer network. Now, the attacker who wants to breach, who wants to gain entry into any of these, will look out for vulnerabilities in the system. All right, there will be some weakness. There will be some vulnerability which the attacker will try to exploit. What kind of weaknesses? Maybe in the design of the hardware itself, there is a security flaw. Or maybe in the operating system or in the applications and softwares you're running, there might be some vulnerability which the attacker can exploit. In the networks, there might be a weakness, a security weakness, which the attacker might exploit. Is that clear? So the attacker will look at these gaps in your system, in your network. Now, every computer network comes with a basic layer of defense, a basic layer of cybersecurity, which is collectively called the firewall of your system. Now, your operating system, for example, be it Microsoft Windows or Apple Mac OS, or Google Android, or even the open source platforms like Linux-based platforms, all these operating systems, they have an inbuilt security feature, right? The developers, they would have built in a basic cybersecurity protection for your softwares, for your operating system. Similarly, every application that you're using, those who develop the app, they will ensure a basic layer of security for your applications. The hardware also, in the design of the hardware, there are basic security measures that go into it. In the network, again, right? The right security measures with encryption is used in the networks as well, along with password access and other basic security features. So collectively, we refer to this basic layer of security your system has as the firewall of the system. All right. Generally, firewall refers to only to the operating system and the softwares, but you can say generally the basic defense your system has, right? We call that the firewall of the system. Now, in this firewall, there could be these flaws which I was mentioning. Some vulnerability or weakness might exist, which creates a gap in your system. And this is exactly what the attacker will look for. Anyone carrying out a cyber attack will look out for these gaps. They'll try to breach this, they'll try to exploit this to gain access into the system. So they can hack into your system, into your network, either through the Wi-Fi, LAN, or mobile data connection that you have, or through your operating system and the applications, through the software, or even through the hardware. All right. So essentially, an attacker will look out for the weakness, the vulnerability, and he'll try to exploit that. Now, especially if you look at the softwares, which are basically a very complex algorithm, right? There will be millions of lines of code which would have been used to develop the operating system or all the software applications. Now, these are so complicated algorithms. It's such a complicated piece of code that there might be vulnerabilities which are not known to the developers themselves. The developers themselves don't know that there is such a flaw, as it's a very complex piece of code, as it involves millions and millions of lines of code, right? Despite all the security checks, quality checks, and security measures, there will be gaps, weaknesses that exist in the code itself. Developers themselves will not know such a vulnerability exists. So there is a name for such a vulnerability. Does anyone know what is it called? Does anyone know what such a vulnerability is known as? Neeraj has given the right answer. Very good. Such a vulnerability, which is not known to anyone, including the developers themselves, is called a zero-day vulnerability. Please write this down. It can be a prelims question, because most of the cyber attacks that happen involving cyber crimes, they happen by using zero-day vulnerability. They exploit the zero-day vulnerability. That's why such attacks are called zero-day exploits. So UPSC might ask you in prelims, what is zero-day exploit? What does it refer to? It refers to a vulnerability in the software which is not known to the developers, not known publicly, but the attacker will figure this out. The attacker will figure this out and exploit this to gain access, to breach into your firewall and get hold of your system. All right. When the first time when it comes out in the open, that's when it becomes a zero-day exploit, meaning someone has exposed it and also exploited it to their advantage. That is why many companies, they reward the bug hunters. There are bounty programs run by all the big companies. They provide incentives to freelancers, the ethical hackers, right? So freelancers, ethical hackers, the bug hunters, they can scan the code, they can go through all the features, and if they come across any vulnerabilities which is a threat, they can flag that, and the company will recognize that. They'll reward them as well. They give them a very good bounty for finding the bug. These unknown bugs in the system, not known to the developer themselves, is called a zero-day vulnerability. Once it comes out, right, in the public domain, and if an attacker exploits it, it becomes a zero-day exploit. So attackers look for such vulnerabilities, which is not known to anyone. They'll try to scan the code, they'll try to figure this out, and they'll try to hack into the system by exploiting this zero-day vulnerability. Meaning there is no security for this. There's no security patch available. So such an attack which happens by exploiting an unknown vulnerability is called a zero-day exploit. So once the vulnerability becomes known, the developers will create a security patch. They'll plug that immediately by creating a security patch for it. That's why you get your updates. You might have seen every time you update your OS, your applications, it will say that one improvement through the update is that your security will improve. Meaning they have figured out some flaws. Either the company has done it on its own, the internal team of developers, the internal teams have found out a bug. They're trying to fix that. Or it was a 0-day vulnerability, not known to the companies, flagged by someone else, and then they're trying to plug that. So they will send this as an update, as a security patch to the software so that they can plug this gap, plug out this weakness. So in any cyber attack, the basic mechanic is this. It's very simple. The attacker will look out for these weaknesses, either in your hardware, your software, or in your network. They'll try to breach the basic layer of defense which is there, which includes your antivirus as well. Just because you installed antivirus doesn't mean you're fully safe. Yes, it guarantees cyber security, but not 100% cyber security. So the attacker will look for such weaknesses and he'll try to breach into your system, trying to gain unauthorized access. All right. Now, once the weakness is known, once they figure out where they can breach your system, they will use a variety of softwares, which is called malware, to gain access into your system, to gain even control over your system. These softwares with a malicious intention is called a malware. Malware is basically short for malicious software. It's a piece of code written by cyber attackers, cyber criminals. Cyber criminals, cyber attackers would have written this piece of code with the wrong intention, with a malicious intention, with the intention of hacking into your system, getting unauthorized access into your system to steal your data or to get control over your device and manipulate the operation of your device. If with such a malicious intention a piece of code is written, such a software which is having a malicious intention becomes known as a malware or malicious software. There are different types of malwares. For example, you would have heard about a computer virus, computer worms, trojans, ransomware, etc. These are the popular ones. There are many more, but these are the popular ones. So virus, worms, trojans, ransomwares, all these are malwares, different types of malwares or malicious softwares. So hackers can not just exploit the vulnerability in the software and the network, even in the hardware there could be a problem. In the hardware design itself, there could be a flaw which attackers can exploit in their cyber attacks. Is that clear? Now, what is the threat from a cyber attack? What threat do you face? Let's say your system has been hacked. Your system has been hacked through one of the malwares or through one of the methods which we are going to discuss later. Now, what will happen once you're a victim of a cyber attack? What is the risk you're facing? What could you lose? How could this affect your safety and well-being? Right? What are the consequences, basically? What will happen to the victim? Let us see that. One, the hacker who has hacked into your system might steal the data, especially sensitive personal data can be stolen. This is one big risk you will face. Now, some of the personal data can be intimate. It's something which is personal to you. It's part of your privacy. Through such intimate data, you can be blackmailed. You can be blackmailed to extract ransom. Right? This is one of the biggest risks where you face financial losses. You might face embarrassment. Your dignity could be compromised because your intimate data is in the hands of the hacker. He will threaten to release it if you don't pay him the ransom. This is one risk that you might face. Next, they might steal such data which is of financial importance to you. For example, your bank account details, your credit card details, right? Your passwords. Now, this becomes a huge financial risk. You might lose all your savings. Your bank account will be emptied within minutes if you are at risk of such a fraud, right? If they get hold of your net banking details, your credit card details, login passwords, it can lead to a major financial risk for the victim. Other than this, the hacker might just be a voyeur, meaning they just want to secretly observe what you're doing. They can get hold of the system, control the devices as well and the operations of the device. They can switch on the mic, the camera. They can monitor your keystrokes, what you're typing, monitor your online activity, right? Which is basically nothing but espionage or spying. We say espionage only when it involves government actors, but in general, this is voyeurism, the act of secretly observing, the act of collecting information on you secretly, monitoring your activities, right? This becomes the other threat, a major threat to your personal privacy. Now, when it comes to governments and private industries, the risk is not just about losing sensitive data. The risk is not just about compromising data because of spying and espionage, but the hacker might gain control over the system itself. Apart from the risk of stealing sensitive data and getting spied upon by the attacker, governments and industries, they face a risk where they gain control over the complete system. Now, today, you know that all major operations are controlled by computers, from dam operations to power plant operations to nuclear plant operations. Everything is controlled by computers, right? So if the attacker gains control over such critical systems, they can actually cause a real world physical disaster. They can manipulate the operation of the system. They can manipulate operations. They can gain complete control over the operations of the system and the network, manipulate the operations in such a way that it could lead to physical destruction, causing physical incidents. Like a power plant can be fully brought down, causing a accident as well, right? In a thermal power plant, boilers could be made to explode. In a nuclear plant, you can cause a nuclear accident. A nuclear disaster can be triggered through a cyber attack. You can breach dams, causing floods, or you can even lead to the destruction of the dam itself with carefully planned operations. You can destroy an entire industrial facility. You can bring down the power grids, creating a blackout. You can bring down the banking financial system, halt the stock markets. So the possibilities are endless. You can cause a train accident. You can cause an air crash. That is the tremendous potential that exists in the cyber domain, especially when government and private entities are involved, right? If government entities are targeted, or if private industry is being targeted, and if the attacker gains complete control over the system itself, they can manipulate the operations in such a way that they can destroy the operations, that can destroy the physical infrastructure itself. So this becomes the biggest threat, apart from the personal threat at an individual level, where you are being blackmailed, held for ransom, where your money is being stolen, right? Apart from this, apart from compromising on your privacy and your personal details, at the government level, at the level of the industry, there is a much bigger risk. It's not just about losing data, losing money, paying ransoms, right? Or where classified information is stolen. where government, private companies are also held for ransom. It's not just about that. Apart from these basic risks, there is a risk where infrastructure can be destroyed. Physically, in the real world, destruction can happen because of a virtual attack. That is the power of cyber war. Countries can be brought down to their knees without even firing a single bullet today. Without going to physical war, a country can be crippled even before the war begins. That is the potential of cyber warfare. So, as a result, cybersecurity becomes extremely critical, right? This is something that you can't ignore or you can't, choose. You have to focus on this. Governments, private entities, and each individual, anyone accessing the internet, they have to be mindful of cybersecurity. They have to be mindful of the consequences. Is that clear? So now, based on this, let us study the different types of malwares and attacks which are used. Let us talk about DDoS attacks, which are frequently in news. Let's understand different malwares. What's a virus? What's a worm, a Trojan, ransomware? Let's see the different methods which are used to trick, deceive, and commit frauds. These are some basics, right? I'll not get too technical. I'll keep it very simple. I'll use very common, simple words so that everyone can understand, and that's how questions will be asked as well. All right. So let's take a look at that. Let us start with DDoS attack. What is DDoS? Anyone? Can anyone give the full form? What does DDoS stand for? Femina says denial of service. Very good. Aniket, Abhijit also says denial of service. Vaishna has given the complete full form, distributed denial of service. Very good. DDoS is distributed denial of service. So how does this attack really work? What does really happen in such an attack? To understand this, you need to learn a very basic fundamental concept related to the internet. Regarding how the internet functions, there is one fundamental concept on which the internet is built. It's called the client server model. The client server model. This is the very foundation of your internet. All right. Again, as I told you, I'll keep it very simple. I don't want this to become too technical. The client server model is the very foundation of your internet. This is how you're all interacting with the internet. This class which is happening, right, virtually, online, it's based on the client server model. Let's see how. The client is nothing but the user's device. You are the user. All of you. You're watching this class either through your mobile phone, through your laptops, through your tablets, or maybe desktop computers. All those devices accessing the internet, looking for some data, looking for some kind of service online. You become the client, the device basically, right? Not personally you, but your device becomes the client here. Now, there are servers which basically serve the device and the requests that are raised by the device. Let's say you type byju'sexamprep.com. You open your browser on your device. You enter the URL, the website you want to access. Let's say you type facebook.com, google.com, right? Or byju'sexamprep.com. Anything that you type and enter on the browser triggers a request from your device. The client device is requesting something from a particular server. Now, when you're typing, let's say facebook.com, it's basically requesting the home page, right? The home page is something that you're requesting, your client device is requesting, where you have the username login access, username password is entered for logging in. This is what your device is requesting. The moment the server receives this request, right, Facebook's server will deliver the home page onto your device. All right, this is the very basic model of how the internet functions. Your client device generated a request asking for the home page of Facebook. Once you enter the correct URL, it reaches the right address, the server's address. The server understands what your device is asking, what request is being raised. So it knows you're looking for the home page, and it delivers the home page onto your device, onto the client's device. So since this is serving your request, that's why it's called the server in the first place, right? Since it is serving all the requests of the clients, that's why it's called the server. It's called the client server model. Now, internet is this in its most simple, basic form. Of course, the real internet is much more complicated, but this is the very basic, the most simple explanation that I can give you. It's based on this client server model where devices are being served by the servers. Now, every server has a certain capacity. Each entity, each institution, be it Facebook, be it Byju's, be it a government organization like UPSC, for example, they all have a certain capacity to their server. They would have designed the server with a certain capacity to serve the requests. There will be a maximum capacity. Now, this capacity is designed keeping in mind the maximum demand that they expect, the maximum traffic that they expect. Right? Now, let's say you are watching the match on Hotstar. So Disney Hotstar knows what traffic to expect. They would have designed their server to deliver all your client devices with live streaming, uninterrupted, high quality live streaming. And they would have scaled their server capacity, right? They know for India-Pakistan match, there will be a surge in traffic. For other matches, they may not get the same kind of traffic. So keeping these changes in traffic and changes in demand, they would have appropriately designed their server capacity as well to ensure that everyone gets uninterrupted access. Let's say only 1 crore people are watching. Tomorrow, suddenly, because of India-Pakistan match, the viewership jumps to, let's say, 10 crores. The server should not be overwhelmed because servers have a maximum capacity beyond which they cannot serve. What if the server is flooded with millions of requests beyond its handling capacity? What if the server is overwhelmed beyond its capacity? That is when your server freezes, right? Your server goes down. Your server will not know which request to serve, and the system shuts down for a brief period, causing an error page to come on your device. You would have seen the error codes that come up on your browsers, right? Many times when it happens because of the breach in capacity of the server, if the server is down completely, you get a particular error code showing that the page cannot be displayed. Meaning the server went down. It couldn't identify which request to serve. Let's say the server was designed to handle 1 million requests, but all of a sudden it got a traffic of 10 million. So it's overwhelmed right now. It doesn't know which request to serve, and it crashes, causing a shutdown of the server briefly, which affects the service for the user. The client service experience, user experience is affected, right? So this could happen anywhere. Let's say UPSC notification is out. Today is the last day to apply for the exam. Suddenly there will be a surge in traffic. All the students, as you know, applied the last minute, right? So UPSC would have anticipated this, right? And they would have built appropriate server capacity to handle the additional requests. But what if someone is flooding the server with requests which can confuse the server and bring the server down? This is exactly what happens in a DDoS attack. The attacker will lead a distributed attack with the intention of denying service to ensure that service gets denied to the genuine users. All right? How do they do this? The attacker can create bots. They can either take over hundreds and thousands of computers around the world from which they can generate these fake requests, Or today, you can automate this. With just one code, you can create a bot that can create millions and millions of requests which appear to be genuine requests from actual users. These bots mimic the action of a client device. See, these are the genuine clients. Genuinely, they are trying to access the server, trying to watch a cricket match or watch this class or access UPSC website to apply for the exam. These are the genuine users. But an attacker from the outside who wants to disrupt this service, he wants to deny service to the actual clients. He will use bots, which is basically a system of a network of hundreds and thousands of computers which he has already hacked into. Or they might write an algorithm in such a way the code itself will generate millions of different unique requests as if it is coming from different computers from different locations. So by mimicking the action of a real client, these bots will flood the server with these fake requests. Now, before mounting this distributed attack, which is coming from multiple locations, the attacker would have studied the server's capacity. They would have tested the server's capacity. They will know that, okay, this server can handle, let's say, 10 million requests simultaneously. But the distributed attack will generate 100 million requests, 50 million requests, right? The developers also know, the owners of the server will know that such surges can happen. They would have accounted for these traffic surges. They would have created a buffer as well. Even though, let's say, they expect only 5 million requests, just as an additional buffer for safety, they would have built a capacity for 10 million or 20 million. But if it goes beyond this significantly, right? If there are millions of fake requests coming in along with the genuine traffic, the server will get overwhelmed at a certain point, not knowing which request to serve. As a result, the server will crash for a brief time. It restarts, it reboots, and this will deny service to the genuine clients. So that's why it's called a DDoS attack. Genuine service is being denied. There is denial of service which is happening. And it's a distributed attack coming through multiple locations where bots are mimicking these fake requests. It looks like a genuine request to the server, but these are all fake requests coming from bots. It's a distributed attack. So distributed denial of service. So the attacker will do this sometimes just for the fun of it, the sake of it, just to disrupt service, to affect the brand name of a company or a government entity. Because when you try to access, you don't get access, you obviously don't like the user experience, right? Or they might do it because they might be sponsored, or they're trying to retaliate and send a message. And they might even be planning a bigger attack after this, because when the server goes down, when it shuts down after a DDoS attack, it makes the whole system vulnerable. The firewalls will also go down. The basic layer of defense will be down. So they might use the opportunity to hack into the server itself, to steal the data, to get hold of the server and steal data during this shutdown period. That is why DDoS attacks are dangerous. It not only denies service and affects user experience, it could lead to bigger attacks where the attacker will exploit the vulnerability of the server, where the firewalls are down, plants malwares in it, and it could lead to loss of data, where the attacker might steal sensitive data, thereby resulting in a massive breach, a massive data breach. So such attacks are called DDoS attacks. It's very common in the industry, right? It's one of the biggest causes for cyber crimes and cyber thefts and frauds as well. All right. Even let's say when India-Pakistan tensions increase, for example, there could be these very nationalistic hackers who try to deface government websites. For example, Indian hackers who are acting on their own, not with government support, they're acting on their own. They might target Pakistani government websites. Similarly, Pakistani hackers might target Indian government websites. They'll try to disrupt the service, right? They'll launch DDoS attacks to deny service, bring down the website and post messages. They will claim the attack and they will send political messages as well, display messages to humiliate the other country. Or Private companies might do this to each other. Competitors might do it. To disrupt their competition, they might target their competitor, bring down their websites, denying service to them. Right? So DDoS attacks is a major factor in cyber crimes today. But today there are enough cyber tools available to prevent this from happening. To shield the servers from this, there are sophisticated tools available. There are many companies that specialize in cybersecurity in tackling DDoS threats. Today, cybersecurity tools are so advanced, they can figure out which are fake requests coming from bots. They can filter out and separate the fake bot requests while continuing to serve the client requests. Such sophisticated tools are available. It will figure out the fake bot requests. Once it detects an attack, automatically the bot requests get filtered out, while clients don't even experience any disruption in their service. There are tools available to detect the attack, and immediately the server will shift to another location. Meaning the server will move out from here. This server, even if it's coming under attack, it will move to different locations where they have multiple servers and start serving. It will start serving the clients from the other location. So such sophisticated tools are available today, but DDoS attacks remain a major threat. Is that clear? So next, what is hacking? Hacking is the way through which your cyber defenses are breached and the attacker is gaining entry into your system. That is called hacking. That practice, that method is called hacking. An attacker getting unauthorized access to your system or to your computer network. That is a hack. So with regard to these attacks, these hacking attempts, there are many techniques that are used, many fraudulent methods that are used to trick and deceive. One of them is called phishing. Phishing is a fraudulent practice which is used by cyber attackers and criminals to deceive their target. All right. So UPSC might ask you in prelims or mains, what is phishing? Can you describe this? Right? What threat does it pose? It draws from the word fishing, from the act of catching a fish. How do you catch a fish? You use a bait. You use a bait to lure the fish to think that it's food. But the moment it latches onto the bait, it gets caught in the hook, and then you fish out the catch. Basically, the fish is deceived. It is duped. It is tricked through a fraudulent method. Right? The act of catching fish is a fraudulent method actually. You're using a bait, a piece of food, or a worm, which is attached to a hook. The moment the fish catches onto it, it gets caught in the hook and you pull the catch. So something similar happens in phishing, phishing. The cyber criminals, they use such fraudulent methods and tricks and hacks to deceive their target, to convince the target to do some action, to carry out some action through which they'll get trapped. Just like the fish gets trapped in the fish hook through a bait. Similarly, the attackers are luring you. They're trying to trap you. And they induce the targets to commit some action. So let's see how it is done. There are many different ways in which it is done. You might get an email claiming that the mail is from a bank where you have an account, claiming that it's from your office, it's from your college. All right, but these are fraudulent mails. It's a fake email. The attackers, they might have got some data on you. Since there is a lot of data floating around, right? They might know who exactly you are, that you're studying in this college, you're working in this company, or you have a bank account in this particular bank. With this information, they can plan a campaign, a very specific targeted campaign, launch an email or even a message which looks very genuine. It looks authentic. You might receive an email which will have all the correct logo as well, correct color combination, design, everything. asking you to change your password. The mail might claim that your account has been compromised, there is some cyber threat. They might say that you have to change your password for your safety. Or it might ask you to share your details for some updates, for some updating of records. Now, if you don't pay attention to it, if you don't observe carefully, if you don't apply some common sense, you can easily get deceived and tricked, because that is how carefully they would have drafted the mail. From the text, the way the message is structured, right? And even the logo, color combination, everything looks very, very similar to the original official emails that you might get. Now, those who are not well aware, right, that banks never ask for such information. Your office will never ask you to update records like that. If you don't have that kind of common sense and awareness, you might actually end up committing that action. Whatever action the email is asking you to do, you might end up doing it. They might ask you to enter your username and password, give your bank details or your credit card details. They might ask you to download a document, download the attachment. Is that clear? The moment you commit any of these actions, you are already a victim of a cyber attack. The moment you do what they're asking you to do, they might ask you to click on a link which they have shared in the email. They might ask you to enter these details, which is your personal banking details. They might ask you to download the attachment. The moment you commit the action, you are caught. You are a victim. They can now plant the malware, hack into the system, and do anything that's possible after that. Everything becomes possible after that. So you are tricked, you are deceived. This is nothing but social engineering again. Your behavior, your choice was manipulated without your knowledge through a well constructed trick. Many people have fallen prey to this. Not just people who are not aware, even well educated people, right? Even people who have awareness of cyber attacks have fallen prey to this. Sometimes it is foolish on the part of the victims. There are cases where, I mean, you laugh if I tell you the incidents. There are cases where many Americans, they got duped of millions of dollars of rupees in the early days of the internet, in 1990s and early 2000, when internet was still new. The Americans, they would get mails, claiming that they are a Nigerian prince and they're inviting them to Nigeria. They're giving them a lucrative job, right? And or they would get a mail saying they won a lottery, $10 million. You just have to enter your bank detail, we'll transfer the amount to you. Such fraudulent mails, and people would believe that. They would actually get excited that they won this lottery, or they're getting this great job opportunity, and they would commit the action which was being asked by that email. Now, the moment you do anything which is being asked, clicking on the link, downloading the attachment, or sharing your details, right, that itself will expose you and you're already a victim. The attachment might contain a malware. The attachment might contain a virus or a worm or a Trojan. The moment you download that, your system is infected. The malware will start acting, it will start carrying out its actions, and whatever the attacker wants to do, steal data, just watch and observe, right, or threaten for ransom, or control the system, anything can be done by designing appropriate malwares. Such fraudulent tricks, which engineers your choice, your behavior, your preference, such attacks are called phishing attacks. All right, this itself is not the weapon or the malware. It's just a method. It's a trick. It's a fraudulent method of gaining access into your system, of convincing you to commit some action which will compromise your cyber safety. I'm sure many of you would have experienced this. Of late, the threat has grown exponentially. I'm sure you get a lot of WhatsApp calls, messages saying that there is this great job opportunity, there's an investment opportunity, right? Or there could be honey trap methods which are used as well, where communication might come to you either on your Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp, right, where the other person would be of the opposite gender. They would have a picture as well. They'll share images as well to convince that they're a real person. and they might open up for intimate conversations, right? Essentially committing intimate sexual acts, which leads them to record your acts in intimate positions and then threaten and blackmail. This is also a type of phishing where you're being where you're being tricked, and then you're essentially being duped. There are people who have lost lakhs of rupees by convincing that they have an investment opportunity, right? They get these communications either through SMS or any communication platform or through emails. And once they commit what the attacker is planning to do, once they commit that action, immediately you become a victim of these cyber crimes and frauds and attacks, right? So this technique is called phishing. In India, it has become one of the most serious threats today, especially with UPI payments. Many people have been duped and tricked. They get these calls or messages saying we're sending money to you. They'll share the QR code, but actually you are sending money to them. You're not receiving money from them. If you apply common sense, you'll realize that. But sometimes when you're not aware and when you don't apply common sense, you might become tricked, or you might become trapped in these phishing operations. In India, there are many such cartels which operate. These are organized networks which run this. It's not done by one individual. It's by organized groups that these kind of phishing attacks are mounted. Right? If you might have seen Jamtara, the Netflix series, which is a very, very real depiction of what actually happens. A bunch of people with the right skills, to convince, can pull off massive frauds amounting to hundreds of crore rupees. So this has become a nightmare. Many people, especially old people, they have lost their entire life savings. Companies have been duped, right? Many people have been trapped in these fraudulent schemes and fraudulent attacks. Either they compromise their identity, their data, lose their banking details and lose money, right? Or the whole system gets compromised, leading to long-term surveillance and long-term impact on their personal safety and well-being. So this is the biggest risk with the phishing attacks, which are used to trick and deceive the target. So this is where I would like to stop for today. We have covered a number of important topics. So let's resume the discussion in the next class on Monday. We have a few more topics to go. We'll discuss other malwares, and we'll talk more about cyber wars, cyber espionage as well. And then we'll discuss what India is doing to step up cybersecurity. So we can keep all these topics for the next class, and we can end the session for today. Let me look at the questions if there are any doubts pending. Point out the flaws to help the companies and the government to improve cybersecurity, to point out the weaknesses and vulnerabilities so that actual attackers don't exploit it. So they are called ethical hackers. Divya is asking, what can be a balanced approach against the criticism for over exemptions given to government and intelligence agencies in the Personal Data Protection Act? See, what you can do is, let's say question comes on Digital Personal Data Protection Act. First, discuss the provisions, right? Highlight all the good provisions, and then point out that these concerns are present. That critics have pointed out that the exemptions given to government agencies has led to fears of targeted and mass surveillance. Point out all the drawbacks that we discussed. So that would not be your personal opinion. You can always say that this is what critics are pointing out regarding this act. You can mention that despite all the good provisions, there are some concerns regarding the shortcomings of the law, where government itself is giving exemptions on all these security grounds, which might potentially lead to violation of fundamental rights. So it's about striking that balance. Maybe give a suggestion as well, give a solution at the end on how the government could have struck a better balance. Maybe with regard to surveillance, there can be a better accountability mechanism, where if there is misuse, if intelligence agencies are misusing the surveillance powers, there should be better accountability, right? So there should be more mechanisms internally in the government to keep a check on these powers, because surveillance is necessary, it is needed. Surveillance is definitely needed to tackle the security threats. but it should be limited powers. There should be a clear system of checks and balances, and that is something the government should clarify. So such suggestions can be given to make it constructive criticism. Will be regulated going forward. Apps cannot ask for any consent they want. Like they can't ask consent to access your images, your contact book, right, or mic and camera. If it is needed for the app, only then they can take consent and use that data. This will be very, very clear in few months. As I told you, the law clearly mandates the companies to collect only minimal data, right? What data is needed for that service, for that app, only that data should be collected. Now, in a particular app, if location data is not relevant, they should not be collecting your location data. If that is done, it's a violation of the law and they'll be penalized for it. See, apps like food delivery apps, the cab aggregators, e-commerce platforms, they need your location to deliver the product, to deliver the service to your doorstep. Others don't need your location, so they need not collect your location data unless it is really needed for the service that they are offering. So this is being now mandated in the law. Data being collected should be minimal, needed only for that service, for the app. They can't collect every data that they want. This will be restricted. You will see that in the notice you are going to get in some months. You have to approve that. Only then you will be able to use the application, and only then they can collect data from your application. All right. So guys, these are the questions. So let's end the session here today. Let me know how the class went. We'll see you next week on Monday. We'll pick it up and we'll continue the discussion. So that is it. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.